Morning, everybody, and welcome to our belated community board meeting, which should have been in February, but of course, with everything happening, it was put off till today. So we've got a few for the public forum this morning, but just before we have those, I've just asked for apologies.
Gary Godley.
Thank you. Are there any further apologies? So I ask for that to be moved and seconded.
Also moved. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. See. Okay. Moved and seconded by Dennis. All in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Public forum, Bruce Scott. Good morning, Bruce. How are you? Welcome.
Welcome. This is a long time since I've been to a community board meeting. That's right. Look, I just wanted to just run a couple of things past you that's on your order paper. There's been a very thorough report done on the extension to the lease.
Sure.
That was, I think, outlined in terms of when the days when Gary Towler was here, and there was a little bit of an agreement as to where it would extend to. And that was designated at the time by some bollards. So this report basically follows that, except that where council did the new footpaths, there was a little bit of land taken off. So I think that's pretty well covered, and I'd like to think that that would be adopted and accepted by the board and council. The second item was that the surf club needs a major upgrade, as needs an upgrade in terms of its earthquake loadings, and that's being done currently. But they also wanted to take the opportunity, seeing they were spending quite a lot of money, and there was government money available to actually do a reasonable upgrade and add on to it in terms of the facilities. That was coming before the board as well. The only thing I wanted to say was that the land use consent that was needed was lodged on the 19th of August. And it's taken some time to get through. It went to a consultant, and then it was found out initially the lease agreement that the surf club had said that they didn't require council approval for doing additions within their existing lease area. It turned out that under the RMA, they do need it. And I initially went to staff and council and said that it appeared as though it would be okay, and I got a response, but then found out that that would be acceptable to the staff, but it needed a council resolution. And so the thing also got held up again there. And then, of course, we got caught up in the elections as well. The only thing I wanted to say, I'm going to be very brief, is that I think that, and this is completely separate to the immediate surf club thing, is that it was a good example of where council could, I'm saying should, but council have someone who in effect, when a public facility like this, and I term it public because it's so much used to the community, came in for a redevelopment or extension or whatever, is that in these instances, council could maybe have somebody that could be designated to actually help drive things through. Because I think that if that was in place, we would have actually even got things sort of organised before the election part of it. And as I say, this was lodged on the 19th of August, and now looks like they're going to be struggling to actually make the building envelope that they can get into between Easter, when the surf club in effect shuts down, and Labour weekend when it opens up again. But that was just all the points I wanted to make, and hopefully when you come to the actual point on the order paper that it's all reasonably straightforward for you.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Bruce. Thank you.
I just got a question.
Yeah, sure.
So Bruce, does that, I don't know what you call a project planner type person, would they engage in like a pre-license discussion and then work through the process with them?
They could be, yes, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's where again there was a little bit of confusion in terms of what I originally went to council on. Yeah, was to in effect get a sign off from council in terms of the extension. Yeah. Mainly because the lease agreement didn't require it. Right. But the RMA does. Right. Somewhere along the line, and all the small print. And I just sort of thought that if we had basically been aware of that early on, it could have just helped sort of put things through. And I think there's a lot of sort of development goes on around the district that could have, you know, that sort of thing happen, you know, whether it was a planner or one of the building people or whatever. I'm not too sure, you know, in terms of the whole setup now over there, but you know, to say, yeah, just to keeping tabs on things and helping it through. That was all.
Very good, thanks.
Thank you, Bruce.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question to Bruce?
Yeah.
Later on, we're going to be discussing the surf club lease.
Yes.
And there's 4 different areas that we're going to talk about. Area 2, there's this part here, you've asked for an extension of the lease to cover your existing, that you use for parking.
Yes.
Yeah, and that seems fine. And then there's another area that you want, it's for overflow parking and access for vehicles and equipment. How often would that overflow be needed?
Reasonably regularly in terms of the events that they have. And one of the things that happens, I mean, there's the main events, mainly like surf competition, national or even regional surf competitions, but also, so they're around about 200 knickers that are members of the surf club now. So they go through that whole 6 period. And so there's a lot of parents come down with kids, even from out of the immediate area, to do it. So it's sort of probably reasonably regularly in terms of an element of overflow. And again, part of that overflow area was required because Blakey's, during the summer months, of course, the old Blakey's Cafe is pretty popular, and you know, car parking gets used up there quite a bit. So yeah, that was part of it.
Thank you.
Can I say one question?
Sure.
Speaking of Blakey, have they been informed and are they part of this one? Is it affecting them in any such way to block their view of the new development or the car parking and like that?
No,
Do they get say on it?
No, it doesn't, I mean, the car parks, that existing car parking is still open.
Yeah.
It doesn't affect their view. The additions basically are in front of, I don't know if you're familiar with it, when you look at where the entrance is now, it's to the left, there's an existing building and that's being added on out towards the beachfront part of it.
Yeah. So when the new building goes up, it's not going to, you know, block out any more of the view or the thing.
No, it's not actually widening. It's being filled in a little bit coming back and a little bit going forward. Mainly the main thing is with it though, really, it was an opportunity with funding being available. There's doing a lot of fundraising as well, is that they can upgrade the earthquake side of it because it's well under what it should be in terms of a community facility.
Thank you, Bruce. Rob Shackleton.
Morning, everybody. I'm representing the residents of Tuna Place in Whangamatā, where we recently had a street light put outside the proximity of the boundary of 104 Tuna Place. As we know, the community plan that we do in Whangamatā is some communities prefer less footpaths, light pollution, retaining the natural rural or beach environment. So obviously the street light doesn't conform to that community plan that we have in Whangamatā. Obviously the street lighting in Whangamatā basically is at the street entrance and the cul-de-sacs at the top. So a street light appearing there seems obscure to what the community plan is. We had no consultation with any neighbours. The Mackay Electrical installed the light. 3 days later, Mackay Electrical connected the light, and by doing that, they removed half the power of my property, which I had to call them back. And on leaving, the Mackay Electrical advised me that the neutral for the street light is connected to a neutral on my property, which seems extremely not correct. But anyway, we did a petition, obviously, where we have over 20 people advising the TCDC that we don't want the light. The light is extremely bright, invasive to the residents, and it's shining into my property 10 metres away, completely into my bedroom. So I'm not very happy about it, but a lot of the neighbours are not very happy about it. When it was installed, we called TCDC, just about everybody in the street called them, and we were advised by TCDC, who was working there at the time, that we should get a petition together, which has been submitted to the council by Rui Benet and Carol Bratton. So it's there, but it is foreign to what we have. Basically, I think overall, the only one I know in Whangamatā Drive going around the corners, there's street lights installed on those corners. But basically, the plan of Whangamatā, as I explained, is entrance cul-de-sac lights. So a few people are complaining that the light is reflecting off houses and into their properties. So overall, we're just wondering who commissioned it. TCDC have not told us, and the community board have advised us they don't know who commissioned it. But I would suggest it was an expensive project when you have to call back the electricians who are nearly back to Hamilton to come and correct the situation, and then to advise us for whatever reason that a council neutral is connected to a private neutral. For whatever reason, I don't understand electronics, but I don't know what happened. Apart from that, I have a copy of the original submission, and I think you might have a copy, but that is the people that opposed it. So I just leave it to the council that it's foreign to the Whangamatā Community Plan to have these street lights, and from up to this point, we have received no advice on why it was put there. We weren't consulted that it was going to be put there, and we just think that it's not needed.
Thank you, Rob. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, Rob, yeah, thanks for your presentation. You will work on wise later. You understand that the light is an LED type light that is just designed to shine down.
It's very bright.
Not flood, and it's still awkward. It's still
It's very bright, yeah.
okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it shines. I mean, the idea of my bedroom is I like to open the blinds and look at the stars. That's what we do in Whangamatā. We're a beach environment. We enjoy that, and I believe one of the complainants there says that the light is reflected from the house in front of him into his bedroom. That's Kevin.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you for that, Rob.
I can go now, can I?
Yes.
Hi, thank you.
Graham starts. Morning, Graham.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. Firstly, congratulations on this magazine. I think it's a real beauty. It's a welcome addition for the locals, and it's also a great addition for people that are visiting the area. I'm particularly interested in the go-betweeners section that's listed here. So compliments on that to you guys that are involved. I just note some of the paragraphs here that I think are really relevant. For instance, Dean Allen, who's the district manager, he says that we're advocates, we're facilitators, we're go-betweens, he says, but most of all, we hear community aspirations and how we can align with that. And I think that's great. And then Margaret Harrison goes on to say, we help community members and groups navigate through council processes so they can achieve their goals. I think that's great. And then Heather Bruce says that, who is the area manager of Mercury Bay, says, we're a tight-knit team that gets stuff done. We're totally focused on delivering services to our community. So I think this is a neat group that helps us as individuals in the community, you know, get things done too. So I'm just referring to the opportunity to provide a town square next to the information centre, and I have presented before, and so you've all got copies of the concept plan and what the town square will offer. If it's okay, I've got another couple of little short topics I would like to add, so if I could have a little bit more time, please, Mr. Chairman. So I understand, I completely understand the difficult times we are facing and the enormous cost of rebuilding roads, home and infrastructure, but I'm really keen to seek a pathway forward for this concept. Basically, it's a roof, it's a new aggregate floor, it's got some seating, and it's got exposed aggregate instead of tiles. It's going to be a positive attribute to the town that will provide a real feel-good factor for people living here. I mean, we see the people walking up and down and they're looking for a place to sit and congregate. It will be all inclusive for young and old. It will be an inspirational place to gather. It'll have a chess set, a book exchange, a community notice board. It could have Whangamatā's history on the brick wall. It'll have a drinking fountain, plenty of seating, maybe busking on a Saturday afternoon and art on the rear fence on a Sunday perhaps. It's a perfect location next to the council buildings and the toilets, and it's right beside the bus stop and beside the information centre, who would be the caretakers, okay? So please...
Can I just interrupt you? We've been through this already.
Yep.
With that earlier meeting. I understood that, you know, briefly that you wanted to speak, not only about that, what you have, but also another idea that you have. But I just remind you that we've heard.
Sure, okay. So I'm just, because that was an informal meeting and this is a formal meeting, so I'm just making sure that it's looked in accordingly. So please help me navigate the hurdle to cross that has the least obstruction. So secondly, I've mooted the idea of perhaps having a kite competition on the beach. Do I need to get special dispensation for that? It's planned for the Monday of Easter, and Jenny Black has offered to help promote it at no charge. So I was just wondering, I think it's an opportunity for families to get together to make a kite. So I thought there could be 4 categories, you know, like the highest flying, the most colourful, etc., etc. And so, yeah, it'll be something that we could engage with the community. And I was just wondering if there's an opportunity to maybe have a small purse available for prize money from some discretionary money.
Chair, to say, meet with me after the meeting, I'll tell you the process, the reserve concession process.
Okay.
To go through, and I'll come and see you after that.
Okay, thank you. And thirdly, there was a fantastic event in the Memorial Hall on Saturday night. There was an artist, a professional artist performing there, and the play was called Hannah. They sold out. The local theatre society administered all the ticket sales, etc. It was a fantastic performance, but the heat was unbelievable in the auditorium. So I want to know how we deal with that, because it's a real health and safety issue, guys. Seriously. So talk to anybody that went to the show, and they'll reiterate my feelings. So thank you.
Thank you, Graham. Any questions for Graham? Thank you, Graham. Gail. Morning, Gail.
Morning. Which one?
Whangamatā Memorial. Thanks.
Right, so I'm Gail Gilbertson, and I presume you've all got a copy of my request, where I would ask the community board to strongly recommend to TCDC that it allows free use of the hall for not-for-profit groups. Did you all get a copy of that? Yeah. So I'm not going to read through it or anything like that. I think the research I did on it was very interesting as far as the early days and the fundraising, etc., that went on. And the groups that I had contacted, I've listed there. Just a couple of prompts, I suppose, is that we as a community and as a council provide playgrounds for children, we provide toilets at no charge for anybody, yet for the older group that want to go out and play, we want to charge them for the use of a hall that has basically been driven by the community in the first place. Yeah, and I don't expect it for completely nothing. We're happy to do something. I'm happy to organise something that we could do for the council in return, and I've suggested there, like keeping the garden around the hall free of rubbish and weeds. If there's anything else, the other thing I thought of was perhaps the back road. We could clean up the rubbish along there, you know, once a month or something like that. So just wanted to make it into a bit of a win-win situation. And any questions?
How much do you pay the council each time you use it?
We pay 50, I'm involved with the pickleball and we use the big auditorium. So we pay $50 because there's only a daily rate and we use it from about 1:45 to about 3:15.
How many people play pickleball?
Varies, anything from 10 to 16. Oh, and we have survived in the past through community board grants and a TCDC grant, which have been very much appreciated, but they give us the money and we give it back. Any?
Yeah, a question there, Gail. I actually, interesting to hear your proposal. So the maintenance around the hall, it's an option for you. So that would just be part of a maintenance schedule that you would organise to go and look after, etc.
Yes, I would involve the other groups.
Yeah.
And perhaps set up a roster that you know, this is your week, this is your week, and all that. Wouldn't take much if people do it on a regular basis just to keep it tidy. I noticed the gardens have been done fairly recently because the rosemary was growing over the thing. But I mean, we could sweep the footpath. The footpath outside there is absolutely shocking. It's just, you know, rubbish probably from the winds and stuff like that. But you know, that sort of thing. Make it look a presentable part of town. Yeah. Anything else?
No, thank you, Gail.
I've just got a card here because I didn't put a contact or anything on there, so that's
Thank you very
my
much.
card.
Thank you for that. Others from the board.
Just about the poll, thank you. Just an update where we're at with the poll and what we're planning. This is, we're into our second year of the grant that we were given by TCDC. So this is referring to the grant. It expires at the end of this financial year, but we haven't made as much progress with the pool as we'd like, certainly in terms of the main pool refurbishment towards the swim pool that we're looking at. There's a bit of a background here with that. We are progressing with the design for the Learn to Swim therapeutic pool, and I'd hope that I'd have a drawing for you today that could give you a bit of an idea of the concept of that. We're working on it, we're pricing it up. We've got prices to build that Learn to Swim therapeutic pool is somewhere between $250,000 and $275,000. Remember, our first application here was to refurbish the main pool, and we're still looking at that option. But we've discounted the vinyl liner that we talked about in our initial application. We've discovered and we found out through a report that we had commissioned that is not the way to go for a commercial pool. And we're now looking at other options. And we've been through the process. We've got starting to get quotes. We've got some ideas of how we'll refurbish the pool. We're not going to paint it. We're going to first put this new finish that's been used in pools these days. It's a pebblestone finish. Once it's installed, that's it, there's no more painting. So there's some information about that. The price to do that work, we've had a couple of quotes. The price to do that work is around about 180,000. and we want to put a portable hoist in so we can get people with disabilities into the pool. So that's going to come somewhere, we think about $225,000. And we only have $250,000 left in the kitty. And what we're proposing is that that can be retained in the, I'll come back to it in a moment. What we're planning to do is apply to Trust Waikato and apply to the Lotteries Communities Facilities Funds. I'm pretty optimistic that if we had the 250 and we've got the 250 that can be rolled over, that we can split that money when we make an application. So we would make an application to build the Learn to Swim pool, and we would allocate some of that funding as our contribution as a community. And we might only be asking the Lotteries Board for maybe 200,000. And similarly, we do the same with the, that's for the main pool. The Learn to Swim pool, we go to Trust Waikato, and we do exactly the same again. So for us to be able to retain that $250,000 is crucial. If for any reason that either of those two options fell over, we would then put all of that $250,000 into the main pool refurbishment. That would be a priority to keep that main pool operating for the next 30 odd years. So when I emailed Eileen earlier in the year, just asking if that money could be just retained, she did reply to me, and there's a copy of that in this presentation. And what we're really asking is that that money, that $250,000, is retained in the Whangamatā Retained Earning Reserve, so we can access that a little bit later on. I don't think we're ready to access it probably until after the close of the financial year of this particular year. So really that's where we're at. I just have to say the pool is just completely blown away our expectations of what we thought we were going to get in this first year of it being heated. We're now struggling to find time to get people in to have slots for aquarobics and so on. So our vision still remains that we want to have an outstanding facility in town. We're working towards it, but we just need a little bit more time and more support. Thanks.
Thank you. Rob, any questions for Rob on the?
Yeah, just one, Rob, if I can, and thank you very much for your report. You were looking for a bouncy castle thing as well. Is that in part of this discussion?
That's all of the fundraising that we do for pool equipment and outside of normal running costs, all comes internally. So Graham's doing a great job with the sausage sizzle. We're up to about $6,000 already. We need another 3, maybe 4. We'll get that by next summer. And lots of the local communities are supporting us. We've been out, for example, Oceana Gold have donated some money to buy CCTV cameras. We've got another 10 grand this year from PowerCo to run our water safety programs, and we've extended that into a poultry. It's just all good news. It's really good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rob. Gail on mangroves.
Right, I'm still Gail Gilbertson, and this time I'm representing the Whangamatā Ratepayers Association. We just thought that we'd bring you up to date with what's happening in the mangroves. Not that that's our core responsibility, but we do have a member on our committee who's much more involved. So it was really just to bring you up to date on the stalemate position, basically. And I've put on the last paragraph, and we are hoping that Warren Mayer, who's on the Waikato Regional Council now, will be a little bit more receptive to the mangrove situation. And it's just a great shame that, as I say in this, that if nothing's done soon, all the work that has already been done is going to be just a complete and utter waste of time, because all the mangroves are going to grow up again. And because that was really quick, is there any questions on that?
I just got one, if I can, through the chair.
Sure.
The Waikato Regional Coastal Plan Review, is that any dates on when that's going to do? Because that impacts what you're trying to achieve there. Have you had any updates?
I haven't seen any requests from.
Okay, thank you. That's all right. Thank you.
Because that was really quick, can I just carry on to another little matter, Mr. Chairman? The beach needs a clean up. Now, the Ramblers have done something. But I was told it was the job of the harbour master. So I rang Waikato Regional Council, asked to speak to the harbour, asked for a contact for the harbour master, and they told me that Whangamatā hasn't got a harbour master at the moment. And so I've left a job in with the Waikato Regional Council. Then I spoke to somebody here this morning who is a maritime officer, because the harbour master isn't a harbour master anymore. He's a maritime officer, and we've got 1.5, he said, one full-time who's in Tairua and the local person. And he told me that the beach clean-up is the responsibility of TCDC. I'm quite happy to organise. The last time I walked on the beach, I think most of the logs have actually been swept back out to sea now, which I think is a real shame. They should have been pulled off. But, you know, I'm quite happy to organise to get rid of the green rubbish that's in mounds on the beach and make it look a bit more presentable. But we would need assistance or the ability perhaps to get that off the beach and to the dump, the transfer station. I think a good volunteer effort from Whangamatā residents would be really good. Yeah.
Barry King is the.
I spoke to him this morning. Yeah. So it's interesting that the Waikato Regional Council doesn't know. Yeah.
The guy at Tairua is looking after their harbour and Barry's looking after this one.
Yeah, but Barry told me that it was TCDC's.
The beach.
The beach.
Yeah. I think, and further earlier later today, we'll be talking to the coastal scientist. But with all these cyclones that we've had and the continuation of the damage, I think they're waiting for that to occur.
Well, they're waiting for another storm.
Well, they're waiting. It's not that point spending money, which we've already done in relation to the frontage for the.
Yeah, but this is what I'm saying. If we did a volunteer, it wouldn't cost. The only cost perhaps would be if we were charged at the transfer station.
Yeah, well, I congratulate you for having that thought going forward, and good luck putting it together. We're looking for a beach care group to be formed, so fantastic. I think you'll find the doctoral organisation loves the seaweed dried to go around the areas because the sand builds it up and helps around the protection, so maybe some discussion with them.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Gary. Rob, on the AGM.
Thank you. Just a bit of a brief report on the AGM. We had 80 people plus at the AGM on the 25th of February. Mayor Len spoke at length about the recent storms and the damage and the infrastructure and how it was going to be addressed. Three main topics came out of the AGM. Biggest concern is the roading from here to Waihi and what happens if that falls over. The stormwater and flooding again were very, very evident that a lot of people just couldn't quite work out where that was heading. Beach erosion, and then the question that always comes up on rates: how much of the rates that we pay from Whangamatā comes back to the region in services and so on? And Gary was going to investigate that. I won't go through all of these items, but certainly the road over here was the #1 topic that people were worried about. How do we survive if that road shuts? Is there an emergency plan in place? Is there any thought being how people would get food supplies, medical supplies, how they would get to medical treatment? And when we went to a local meeting in town last week, there didn't seem to be a great deal of idea how we would manage that. We did hear that the logging is potentially going to commence on that valley that comes off the Whiratoa Bridge. And we've had a look at the bridge, obviously, but that would create a lot more traffic and volume going over that part of the road if that was to start in this next coming year. The stormwater on Williamson Golf Course, that's showing little sign of dissipating. Obviously, there's houses adjacent there are still pumping water. The storm we had the other night has just made it a bog. It's just full of water again, ponding. Work has been done on that Williamson Park pond, and it has seemed to do the job. It's full again now and it's pumping. We wonder how much that's costing per day to run those pumps. One of the things that was suggested to the people who are suffering flooding, rather than ringing the office here, is to log a job on the consumer services system, TCDC. People have started to do that already, and they are sending those details to ratepayers who are going to monitor to just see how many people we're getting who are recording those problems. One of the questions that came out of that meeting was that we get together with a few locals and we put together a report, and Graham's going to talk about that special report that's been produced. There is a question, has the TC flooding management plan, is that available? If it is, can we get a copy of it? There was a report that in Seaview Road, there were sewage spills that were coming up during the storm, and the people that advised that said it was due to the power backup supply not working, and it was waiting for repair to be repaired. And we just asked if that's correct. There was also an issue with the pumping of potable water and storage was unable to occur at the same time. Again, we're just seeking clarification on that. We formulated a list for the residents and ratepayers of the projects that are actually going on in town, and we're very keen to keep that to the forefront. So we want to work with community and council, and so we can identify what's being done. Rutherford Road's currently having concrete nib walling put in. Nobody can understand why that road has been chosen when we've got Tui and all those roads just inundated with water. This would need attention. Now, I have spoken to Terry about it, but we wanted to raise that issue. In light of the flooding, and there's a stormwater budget, we believe, of 1.2 million for the next financial year, what plans are underway and what work is being identified to address the stormwater issues in town? And if there are any, ratepayers of the local community would like to know what they are. The planned development of the campsite and the likely effects of inundation in that and the surrounding areas, that came up, bearing in mind that flooding regularly occurs down the bottom of Lulu at the access 6. That water is sometimes 400 millimetres deep because you come down the bottom of that gully. The Chevron lighting, street lighting, another question on street lighting. This is up Chevron Road. The property owner complained about the third street light that now is within 150 metres of his house, 3 of them. And there's not even a footpath on the side of the new floodlight. And it just seems bizarre that this street has got 3 lights and there are parts of Whangamatā that have got no lighting. And we just wonder how that decision gets made and how it gets put into place. We don't want to try and get some clarification on that. The street lighting in town hasn't been operable for the last week. To my knowledge, I've been going to the pool at 6 in the morning and it's absolute pitch black everywhere except Williamson Park pretty well. It's interesting that Whangamatā are getting some CCTV and they can't find and identify a position to put it. Well, we would have thought that that would have been the first thing that you'd have done before you decided you're going to get CCTV. There's 4 additional CCTV cameras allegedly for town, but that's been deferred and people thought that that was disappointing. The special plan's been deferred. We did talk about that at the AGM and Len did explain why, and that was acceptable, but it was still disappointing. The Esplanade Boardway, we understand there's a report that was due to be tabled at the end of February, whether that project is going to go ahead. And if so, what will the cost be? There's several items here that we've just listed as issues. It was interesting that the street lighting in the place at Furatoa was here, and apparently it was agreed to 5 years ago, and it's taken until now to get installed. So those people have come and gone. So as I said before, we intend to meet this list, and it's just a list of works that are underway, and there'll be more to add and some to delete, but we just want to try and keep people informed. Our plan with the special report, we'll talk about later, is to send that to Len Salt and Scott Simpson for their comment. And just finally, it was really shocking to see the damage in Wentworth Valley Road.
Thank you.
I just thought, we just went down for a look and we just couldn't believe just the devastation, and we just wondered how we're going to go about getting that fixed. And it's probably still under warranty. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
Any questions? Sorry.
Well, just thank you, through the chair, if I can, thank Rob for that presentation, and we'll look to answer some of those questions for you.
Graham Nansen on flooding and stormwater issues. Good morning, Graham.
Good morning. Thanks for the time today. Look, you will receive the report, and I won't go through any of it in detail, but essentially this has emanated from the AGM and all the recent flooding issues that we've had in town. The key points that Rob has already mentioned is also covered in this, but essentially this has been put together by a number of qualified people in various fields who are residents in town and property owners in town, and are at a point where they're very, very concerned about what appears to be a level of inaction or no clarity in terms of moving forward as to how a number of these core issues that are affecting property values with a level of groundwater, flooding, and essentially what we've done is put together 10 key points as a result of the AGM and discussion with people who have come to us as the Whangamatā Ratepayers Association. And one of the key points that we see, the first one is that the emergency powers that are in place, that they be retained and allow for the mayor to move forward with some action in terms of rectifying some of the situations we have. In terms of the traffic that's coming in on the Waihi to Whangamatā Highway, we believe that there should be an axle counter on that to try and identify the level of stress that road is going to have in the next, the coming months. And we're already starting to see it fail. We believe that there needs to be, and Rob touched on this earlier on, some form of emergency plan should that road fail, that, the situation we're going to be in is completely cut off. And so essentially we're looking at by sea would be, and air would be the only way to be able to bring supplies in for residents. It would be catastrophic for businesses. We've had numbers of people in business in town, builders, etc., and they're living in fear every day that if that road goes, we're in trouble. Undertake a really complete review of the stormwater system. It is pretty obvious that, with the culmination of the weather events that we've had, that it's just not coping, but there has got to be better ways of dealing with this, and it obviously has to be a long-term plan, and we realise that. In line with it's the priority there is to get that water table down. There's properties in the middle of town there in Bellona, Sylvia Road, etc., and they've been inundated and are still a floodplain basically. One of the things that we believe out of this information that's coming forward is that there has to be some way of implementing building consent regulations that either slow down or put a stop on approval for infill housing or housing that is actually being built at below road level and essentially being built in floodplains. And some of this has already been highlighted, as everybody knows here, so it's not about repeating it. Another point in terms of that is the density of housing. We're looking at the camping ground, soon to be developed with another 40 odd properties, and it's about where's that water going to go. And obviously the issue with the golf course and that upper harbour, the one-lane bridge, the bottleneck that we've got at that bridge into the harbour, which is an ideal way of getting rid of our excess water. Something has to be done about it. All we're asking is that it be taken with some urgency and that we see, we are asking for some action and communication back through ratepayers, through community groups, that we can actually let people know, because there's a lot of people out there and their livelihoods depend on it. retired people, etc. And they just kind of feel they're in the dark. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Graham. Can I just say that your preachings are converted as far as the flooding and everything.
Understand that. Yeah.
And we have been pushing very, very hard. We've got genuine concerns about the Waihi Road, and that has been passed on to Len Salt. And I know that Len has been working with the Mayor of Tauraki for resolutions, but we haven't had those yet. But definitely we have those same concerns.
So we understand that. It's just we felt, and as a result of the AGM, this year we had probably a dominant number of people, residents there, who had never been involved or been to a ratepayers meeting before, and they're all putting their hands up saying we're here for a reason.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, sorry.
Okay, let's
Yeah, sure.
one of the key things that we would like to see happen is that the engineer, the stormwater engineer for TCDC, or the person, I believe there's a group looking at stormwater in Pyro, contractor. We would love to see that person on face to face, and we walk them around the town and show people what it is, so they see firsthand what happens.
Sure.
Just doing it off drawings and on Google is just not the right thing to do.
That request has been made that they have a meeting with us and that they talk about it. And we attended 7 floodings the other night, Rob. Casement Road, Aiken Road, and they were really bad. It was about 8 inches of water right through. So we're aware of that.
So when that meeting takes place, we would request and ask that we can have some of these people in town who understand what was the original concept, what's happening and how it might be able to be fixed. So it's not just left to people out of town to come along and tell us what we need to do.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you, Graham. Now we've got Keith Johnson. Morning, Keith.
Good morning.
Keith is the next Community Board Chair, a member of the Audit and Risk at Council and Ratepayers and Property Development. So Keith just wants, it was not planned on the agenda for him to speak, but he's just asked for a few minutes. So same applies, 5 minutes, please, Keith. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much. Just a little bit of background. As a family, we've been involved in Whangamatā since 1987. So it's a substantial period of time. And going back to the 90s, in my corporate days, long gone, thank goodness, we did the Pacific Heights development, 32 lots. We kind of took it out of the hands of bankrupt operators and made it happen. So we like to think that, getting things done and the community spirit is a good thing. Having retired from the professional era, I have a responsibility as a director, sole director of a trustee company for land holding we have, which is 5 hectares right opposite the golf course. And it's got an interesting history because way back we got resource consent 1998 for 63 residential lots, and for a variety of reasons didn't proceed. And we've endeavoured to attract, let's say, deep-pocketed, competent companies to Whangamatā to actually deal to it and create a holiday/retiree type development. So we haven't had any success with that, but I did take it through the district planning process and didn't particularly succeed with that, but then went to the Environment Court and we achieved 90% of what we were looking for. Now, the reason I'm here is because of my experiences, and believe you me, I've had experiences with a number of councils, but with this one in particular, at the moment, because it's relevant to what we're trying to do, in terms of trying to get a resource consent currently, which is now past the 2-year mark since we first voted it. And we met with the former CEO, Rob Williams, and he kindly introduced us to Brian over here, who was allocated the task of helping us through the process. And despite the best of intentions and everything that we wanted to do, the best way of describing it has just been a completely dysfunctional process. And in some ways, whilst it's disappointing, it's not surprising because there just seems to be almost an overly bureaucratic approach to doing things these days, not necessarily just this council, but certainly within this council, within the planning function. I've got major problems, and I've heard references to a lot of people who have experienced things like that. And I'm almost in an advantageous position, if you want to call it, because of experience to have an insight into why. So we've experienced a GIS system that's been wrong in several instances relating to redundant sewage lines, to an incorrectly located historic places trust site on which is actually on our land, but shown 200 metres away from where it actually is. And it's all led to problems dealing with council officers for various reasons, and council officers insisting on receiving information that sits outside the law. In fact, contrary to what the application says in terms of what's voluntary versus compulsory. Doesn't seem to count for anything because you're always dealing with emails, you're always trying to gain a meeting to talk these issues through so people understand. By the time you've dealt with 7 different people, you can imagine communication channels become quite distorted and you just go around in circles. Now we are millimetres away from getting this consent issued, but there are 2 sticking points. I don't need to go into detail at this stage, but I'm here just to make you aware that the opportunity cost in this town of this nonsense is considerable. Every year that passes is another year whereby at least 600,000 of rates per annum is not generated from the property. You capitalise that in terms of amount of borrowing that could be achieved to help invest in the town, it's substantial money. Now, CEOs and other people think about that stuff, planners don't. They're not in the least bit interested in any of that because I've experienced it time and time again. It's not their thing. So they do what they think is right in terms of the law, but there are issues because their interpretation of the law goes well beyond what can do, not always, can go well beyond what's reasonable and practical. And I've proven it in an audit environment where people have been challenged on their interpretations, and it's just unfortunate that that's the case. So I'm really here to alert you to this because I still feel in my bones that whilst we're almost close to getting it resolved, it could just drag on for a little while. And when it comes time for council to assess its costs, and then endeavour to levy that, well, there's going to be a problem because we're not going to pay for inefficiency and incompetence, and we're not going to pay for information being provided or insisting on being provided and negotiated, which sits outside the law. So at that stage, it could become quite a public spat. So I'm just alerting you to that. We've always have been prepared to abide by the rules, provide information, but based on experience, there's a limit to that. So we sit there trying to get this resolved, and hopefully we will very soon, but we shall see. Now, I'm happy outside this meeting, obviously, because it's not designed for this, to answer any questions that anyone has relating to specifics. It's all extremely well documented, and I can provide documentary evidence of everything I say. Yeah, it's been hugely problematic, and it's counterproductive for the benefit of, well, us, obviously, as a landowner, this council.
Okay, thank you, Graham. Time's up now.
Yeah, sure. All right, well, I'll leave us there.
Just got some questions.
Yeah, sure.
So a couple of questions. So first, you said at the start you had a consent list for 63 properties. What is the new consent, 63 properties? Or what's new?
No.
Secondly, is it the same and it's for sale? So
Well, originally it was 63 lots over the entire 5 hectare block.
Yeah.
And that involved us granting a lot of reserve to council as well, but we're in credit for 21,790 reserve credit square metres. So that was then. Now, all we want is 6 lots, large lots for family purposes, which is,
So the whole land would be.
well, sorry,
So this consent would be for the whole piece of land, 6 lots.
the whole piece, well, no, it's 6 lots within the entire lot. So there's 6 lots on average of about 1,500 squares on average. Okay, there's 3 at 1,000 and the other 2, I can't remember. So it's well within the criteria of what you call fully complying type activity.
And is that the same land that's for sale?
It's all within that block. Yeah.
Yeah, Keith, interesting story. Look, this morning Bruce Scott came and spoke about dealing with council and having a project manager up front that can walk you through the project and stay with you through that process. Do you think that would help?
Well, look, Brian's here today, and Brian's been very helpful in terms of within his demands of his own job. But there's a whole host of suggestions I could make about how council needs to assist through that planning process.
Thank you.
And I'm going to. I've pledged to Brian, I'm going to. I'll put it in writing so that. But there is an attitude issue. One, that's not something I can kind of comment on. People have to look at themselves. And I've had experience in the Environment Court. I've worked with planners for 10, 12 years. So, you know, it's not as if I'm greeny, just trying to, you know, find a way. There's so much that needs to be kind of addressed if you're ever going to make any progress. It's just out of control.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, no further speakers in public forum. A resolve to receive the speakers in public forum. And the motion is that the Whangamatā Community Board receives the speakers, Bruce Scott, Rob Shackleton, Graham Smith, Gail Gilbertson, Rob Boston, and Graham Hanson, and Keith Johnson. For the public forum, including the table material and correspondence. So moved by Terry and seconded by Neil. Thank you very much. All those in favour?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you for that. The next is a introduction Sydney Wales from.
Can I just through the chair, 1.5 items not on the agenda. I'd like to add an item to the meeting after maybe the work program or the action sheet or something there. Yeah, got some items to raise. Thank you.
Thank you. Sydney Wales, is Sydney.
He's on your line.
It's online. Okay. Good morning, Sydney. Thank you for offering to do a presentation. Can you just?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Yep. Yeah, kia ora. So yeah, my name's Sid. I'm from Biosecurity New Zealand. I'm just going to give you guys today a quick update on the exotic caliper response, what we've been doing up to today, what we plan to do in the future. But first of all, I'll give you a quick overview of what exotic caliper actually is. So let me just share my screen and I'll get my presentation up and running. Cool. Can you guys see this?
Yes.
Wonderful. All right. Yeah, so what is exotic caliper and why are we concerned? So exotic caliper is a species of seaweed which is native to the Indo-Pacific region. It's also found all over the world, from Africa, Australia, Pacific Islands, southern Japan. And we think that it came here possibly about 5 years ago, based on how much we've seen on Great Bear Island. Probably on on an anchor or an anchor chain from a vessel that's come from South Australia. It was then first detected on Great Barrier Island in Blind Bay here in July 2021. And subsequently, it was also detected in Trifina Harbour and Whangamatā Harbour to the north. And then a few months later on Great Mercury Island in the Western Harbour there. So it's been quite damaging in places like Florida and in Martinique. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. So yeah, here's Great Mercury Island, and it was detected down here. And recently there's been a couple of detections over this point here as well. So why is it bad? So exotic caliper, it carpets over the seafloor really, and it smothers native species, native seagrasses, native seaweeds, and displaces other fauna such as crayfish and scallops, kina, etc. So when it displaces the seagrass, etc., these are important nursery habitats for fish. So there's possibly going to be flow-on effects to fish populations as well. So yeah, in Florida, as I mentioned before, it was dubbed the killer algae. So on one of their coasts there, it was quite devastating to the crayfish population, and it had quite a significant effect on the community there because of that. So you can see here, this is a scallop and it's got caliper growing all over it. So while we're not exactly sure what the effects of it growing on scallops would be, we can kind of imagine that it's going to be a bit difficult for it to get around in the method that it usually does. So how does it spread? So this particular species of seaweed, it can spread through what we call fragmentation. So when it breaks into little pieces, either through wave action or when equipment is drawn through it, such as anchors or fishing gear, it can break it up, and then those little fragments can go and settle somewhere else and set its roots into the sediment and grow again. So when they do get broken up, they can be carried around on coastal currents. They can sort of form these balls, and they'll roll around on the bottom of the seafloor. And they can survive out of water for up to 7 to 10 days, especially if they're in a moist location, such as like an anchor locker or a bunched up net. Yes. So how to identify it? So the key identifiers for this particular exotic caliper is these oar-shaped leaves. So they can go up to about 10 centimeters long, and they've got a quite a bright green distinctive color. And you'll see these growing up at regular intervals along what we call a stolon, which is kind of like a root system, which will grow underneath the sediment. And so the caliper will shoot this one out below the sediment first, and then you'll start to see these fronds, these leaves popping up along from it. And we've seen it growing on all sorts of surfaces, from sandy to mud to reefs, to growing up mooring lines and on the piles of wharves as well. Especially after stormy weather, you can see it wash up on the beach. We've got, after Cyclone Gabriel, there was quite significant amounts washed up on Okupu Beach and Blind Bay on Aotea, which I've got some photos of to show you later. But more regularly, it comes up in, washes up in these balls, kind of like this. So here's a bit of a view from above, so you can see how densely carpeted it is. It doesn't really leave much room for any other species to get involved. And you can see the stolons there, the root system just growing all over itself. So it's really just leaving no space for any other species. This is a very early growth of the caliper, so you can see it starts off really small. So really important if divers are out that they know exactly what to look for, because this can easily be missed, and the earlier we can detect it, the more likely we have a chance to stop it from taking hold and spreading, and if we do find it in a new location. So here's another bird's eye view. Just you can see, yeah, the stolon's growing all over it and really just densely packed. This is another shot of an early establishment. So you can see a couple of leaves here, and then it's got stolons which have grown out all under the sediment here. And if you see these little pinnules starting to grow up, these are the beginnings of what will then become these oar-shaped leaves. So it shoots out the stolons first, and then it then takes hold. So this is Okupu Beach after Cyclone Gabriel. So as you can see, the entire beach just absolutely covered in these beach casts, what we call them. So they've been ripped up by the storm and then washed ashore, and it was up to 1 meter deep in some places. And so we've been working with local marae and Auckland City Council to try and clear this beach, because for one, it's an eyesore and it starts to rot and smell bad, but also is a biosecurity risk as people can get it caught in their gear, such as this trailer, and transport it to another location if they're not careful and don't wash down all their gear after that. So we do have some native species of caliper in New Zealand. So there's Caliper articulata and Caliper brownie, otherwise known as sea remu, and they're quite distinguishable from the exotic caliper as they've got this middle ridge here, the spine, with pinnules, kind of like a remu plant or a fern, as compared to the broad or shaped leaves as seen in the exotic species. So if you do think you've found some, either as a beach cast or if you're out diving, then the best thing to do is to take a picture of it. The higher quality, the better, and the closer up, the better, because it gives our taxonomists the best chance to identify it. They can call our 0800 number. They'll then direct you about where to send the photos, and then the taxonomist can either confirm, deny whether it's caliper, or they might request additional photos or for samples to be sent in some cases. So I'll talk a little bit about the exotic caliper response. So first of all, what is a response? So at biosecurity, when a invasive pest or unwanted organism is detected in New Zealand and it's deemed to be a risk to primary industries, tau, or stakeholders, then a response may be stood up. And so in the case of caliper, it was stood up in July 2021, and we set out these initial response objectives to reduce the risk of exotic caliper spreading around the 2 islands where it is and to Aotearoa, New Zealand, wider New Zealand, to reduce the potential impacts to the environment, communities and visitors to these islands in New Zealand, and to enhance the mana of the mana whenua and all other partners in the response. So to date, there's been quite a lot that we've done to try and stop this seaweed spreading around. So we've done extensive surveillance dives with NIWA throughout Aotea and the Waihariri Gulf to try and find it, because the earlier we find it, the more likely we are to stop it, as I mentioned before. We established a technical advisory group of some of the best marine scientists in New Zealand to provide us with the best technical advice about how we could possibly treat it if possible, or how to stop it from spreading. We've set up controlled area notices and dorahui over the 3 bays in Aotea and Great Bear Island, and also of the Southwest Bay in Great Mercury Island, and that's to reduce the risk of human mediated spread, so to stop people getting it caught in their anchors and fishing gear, etc. We've also set up a public information campaign, started up in Labour weekend last year, to spread the awareness and education about the seaweed and to get people to, most importantly, check and clean their anchor to stop it from spreading around. We did try to eliminate it using salt, and so it was effective in the area that we tried it. So they just pour about 50 kgs of salt per square meter using a hopper from a boat down onto the caliper, and it kills the caliper, but it also kills every other species that is in that area. And now there's just too much of it really to viably get salt onto all of it. In Blind Bay, for example, there's about 45 hectares, or there was pre-cyclone, and the amount of salt you would need is just too much to logistically do it. So we've also set up ambassador programs with local iwi in both Whitianga and Great Barrier Island to help spread that awareness and education. And we've had boats going out to check on the can zones on Aotea to make sure people are following the rules. So where to from here? So as I mentioned before, local elimination of this caliper isn't considered feasible at this stage. And we're going to shift to a long-term management program from a response framework. So this will shift from from a regulatory approach to more of an educational approach to more of awareness raising and behaviour change campaign. This is going to be called the Exotic Caliper Management Program, which we will hopefully have set up in June this year. So at the moment, we've got these controlled area notices as I mentioned, on the 3 harbours in Aotea and the Western Harbour of Great Mercury. So these are going to be in place until the 30th of April at least, in which they'll be reviewed. And then the decision we've made whether to extend or amend or remove these can zones. So at Ahuahu, they're slightly different. There's no collection of kaimoana at all, but anchoring is allowed as long as you check and clean your anchor prior to leaving. Whereas at Great Barrier Island, over the 3 harbours, there's no anchoring at all allowed, except for exceptional circumstances such as research, access to private property, access and provision of essential services and emergencies. And you are allowed to fish, but only from the shore with a rod and line. So how we're doing with our surveillance? We don't have any active surveillance planned for the future now. However, we are incorporated into research. So Niwa is out at Great Barrier Island right now this week, initiating some research, which I'll talk a bit about in a minute. But they're also, while they're out there diving, completing the research, they're checking on the bays and seeing how much has been affected by the cyclone. We're also tying into existing surveillance programs. So there's the marine high risk site surveillance program, which happens annually, and they'll go around the main harbours of New Zealand and check for a whole bunch of different species. Caliper is now on that list as well. We're also looking at other dock surveillance programs. There's the Waikato Marine Surveillance Program, which has helped provide a bit of information to us, along with the Waiheke Marine Project, who have used a remote operated vehicle to scan the sea floor. So communication awareness. So we set up a big campaign in Labour Weekend last year, and this went over the summer. This had the goal of providing education and awareness to the public, boaties in particular, about the best marine biosecurity practices to stop it from spreading around. So making sure people check and clean their anchor, making sure they're aware of the restrictions in place, etc. And we got Matt Warden involved, who you might know from the ITM Fishing Show, Matt Watson, sorry. And he helped spread the message across his social media channels, and in combination with that and other advertisements, etc., we've reached over 1 million people have seen the advertisements at least. We're also targeting marinas, boat shops, dive shops, fishing shops, etc., with our advertising material, trying to spread that awareness. As I mentioned before, we've got the Caliper Research Program with 3 key work streams. So Ngāti Hei, in collaboration with Cawthron, they're based in Whitianga. They're looking at some of the ecological impacts of Caliper at Ahuahu, and the possible use of eDNA, which is environmental DNA, where they'll be able to take a sample of the water and detect whether exotic Caliper is there. So, for example, if you take a sample in Wellington Harbour of the water, you might be able to detect that there's some Caliper DNA in that sample, and then we can assume that there is exotic Caliper in that area, and so we can focus more surveillance in those zones. Niwa, as I mentioned before, they're out at Aotea at the moment. they're looking at the impacts of exotic clipper on the ecosystems there, in particular tanga species such as kina, scallops, and lobsters there. And they're also looking at how the caliper and native seaweed species recover after the cyclone, as a lot of it was ripped up and moved around. We're also in discussions with AET to conduct some lab trials of kina, so they'll get tanks with caliper and other native species and investigate whether the kina will eat the caliper or whether it will just leave it alone, and that could be a possible biocontrol method in the future. So that's it for my presentation. So if anyone has any questions, feel free.
Yeah, I got one, Terry. Yeah, thank you, Sydney, for your presentation. With these warmer weather coming to New Zealand and tropical cyclones, do you see there's going to be a spread of this around New Zealand?
So the warmer weather definitely will have an impact. So the caliper likes warm water. At this stage, our models show that the water temperature will be able to sustain it down to about Napier. Other than any further south than that, it gets too cold. As far as cyclones spreading around, there is a slight increased risk when these storms come through that they're going to shift it across from these islands to the mainland. This is mainly from Ahuahu to the Coromandel Peninsula. But we don't think there's an increase of risk from it spreading from Great Barrier Island to the mainland because of these, because the water is just too deep in the channel there, and it's too far really for it to shift across.
So down around New Zealand, will this be more of an education program for start? Is this what you're planning?
Exactly, yeah. The main thing now is to stop people from spreading it in their gear, because that's the key risk of it spreading from these islands to the mainland. Is people go drop their anchor, pull it up, get a bit of the seaweed stuck in their chain or whatever, then come back to who knows, to down to Whangamatā, drop their anchor, and then it could take hold.
Right, so a lot of our marinas have rules about boats being washed their bottoms before they come into the marina. Is this the kind of thing that they're going to do with boaties as well, or what?
Yeah, so this species of caliper isn't a biofouling organism, so it won't be able to grow on the bottom of boats. So the main thing is that people check and clean the anchors before they leave the location. So as part of that, yeah, that's basically the main key message that we're trying to get across with this education campaign, is to check and clean your gear. Very similar to the Didimo campaign, if you remember, check, clean, dry. Same sort of messaging we're getting across, but for the marine boaties rather than freshwater.
Thank you.
Sydney, besides the salt treatment that you described, what are the successful eradication for it? Can it be sprayed if it's on land?
So it can't grow on land. It can wash up on the beach, but it is a seaweed, so it will grow in the water there. We're in discussions with our technical advisory group. The salt method was deemed the most feasible for both logistical and effectiveness. There was a bunch of different options provided, such as UV light treatment, but all of them fall short in the fact that there is just too much of it now to be treated. In the case of new detections, we will still be using the salt as it's a proven method of getting rid of it, but that will all depend on how early we could get these new detections and how large the patch is at the time.
Thank you very much. Any other questions for Sydney? Thank you, Sydney, for that very interesting presentation. We really appreciate that. And I now ask for a mover and seconder to move that Sydney's presentation be accepted.
Yeah, happy to move.
Yeah, thank you, Terry and Neil. Thank you very much. Appreciate that, Sydney.
Thanks, everyone. See you later.
Thank you.
Conflict of interest. When we come to the discussion on the surf club, it mentions in that report about the toes for water process. So I would like to stand down on that because of my position. I hold on toes and water, and ask Dennis to take the chair for that discussion. Right. You mentioned about the action plan for 1.5 items not on the agenda. And so the minutes of confirmation, you've all received the minutes of our last meeting. And it now comes for a mover and seconder for those minutes. Can I have a mover and seconder, please?
I'll move.
I'll second. Mark and Dennis, thank you. All in favour, say aye. Aye. Carried. Minutes of confirmation. The elected members' procedural matters and information, that's on item 2.1.
Yeah.
And that is quite a document, yes, sure. So no doubt. Sorry. Yeah, please.
So just through the chair, that report is just information for you of what council signed off on in December's meeting. So it was the code of conduct, the annual meeting schedule, which is a copy of vacuum reductions, and
So code of conduct.
and the expenses and resources policy.
Yeah.
So this is just information for you to know what council signed off on in December.
Right, thank you. Thank you for that. Can I have a mover and seconder, please, for that? Neil and Dennis. The next is the Whangamatā. Move the, oh, yeah, sorry, all in favour, say aye. Aye. Carried. 3.1 is the Whangamatā Community Liaison Board representatives. And you have got a copy of what group members of the previous community board represented and a group listing for the 2022 to 2025, and that consists of ratepayers, swimming pool, community library, harbour, community patrol, enterprise Whangamatā, Whangamatā Information Centre, Onimana ratepayers, Opotari ratepayers, Opotari Law Committee, and Men's Shed.
Through the chair, could I just comment on this before we start?
Sure.
So guys, I just want to really give you a bit of an update. Yesterday we spoke about this at our new community board meeting. And we really were trying to understand why this liaison committee was put together and what was the expectations from the board members. And in light of the fact that we're having network meetings when these groups come along. So are we, and how do we actually have this discussion in this formal room? Because we've got no members' reports. So how do we report back to the community board on the information you receive from the groups that you look after? So we were in a bit of a bind. So actually yesterday we said, well, let's park this and figure it out what to do so that we know, are we just the connection point? So they know that person's going to, or are you expected to go to these meetings? And if you go to these meetings, what's the point of having a network meeting when they come and talk to us at those ones? So it was we were struggling with it, really struggling with it, the benefits of having the liaison person, whereas the old days, they would go along to a meeting and they'd come in and a member's report, you would tell us what's going on and the issues that raised. That's not available now. So I just thought I'd throw that out there now before you start discussion to see where it goes.
Okay, so we no longer will have the reports from members to come back and.
We don't have members' reports yet.
But there is value, sorry, there is value in attending these meetings. I mean, I attended the Opotari general meeting, and sure, we could have a report back from the chairman or some representative, but to be there and feel what the meeting and the people are talking about, and for you to be available, someone to be available and come and just share what they want to say, is a value. And the same as the ratepayers meeting last Saturday. To just hear just to be within the environment, hear what people are saying and how they were expressing it. Rob gave a good report, but just the sincerity of the people who attended that meeting doesn't come through in that report. So I don't know how we do that.
Yeah, so that's a discussion, because I think that's connection.
Sure.
It's not a liaison, and it's because the liaison would come back and report. So I'm just saying we can't do that now. So how do we get that, your information or your feelings back through the board?
So why can't we have a report?
We want that for us to be the voice of the.
As the report says, the elected member can report back through the next networking meeting to the board.
So if there's a networking meeting, then the group comes along to speak. It kind of makes, while you go to the meeting to get the feedback, it's really coming through that as a method of communication as opposed to the board speaking on behalf of.
But I do have another question. We heard these reports today from a variety of people. But what happens next? That's my, but what happens next?
Good question, because how do we address those points? I've got 12 written down now to make sure we can communicate back to those groups that we've taken on their action and here's the results of those actions.
So those actions are being taken down and it's what I follow up.
Yeah, but how do we have input for that?
You've got
Is it just your feelings or is it our input on our meeting? How do we give you input on the hall per se? I agree with the hall that we paid for the halls through years ago, and we pay depreciation on all the time now. So the money's there just like a school playground we put in for a community. So why should those halls, especially if we're going to look at reducing some of the grants, which we're going to talk about later, those halls should be free. They should be able to use them, and they've got a volunteer group prepared to use them and prepared to maybe do some maintenance around them. So it makes me sense to see, as we change in the funding options, that those facilities are available for all to use. So those, how do we get that information through to the ratepayers as staff respond? That's what I want to know.
Oh, Dean has.
Oh, Dean, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, just one point, just to be really clear about, there still is the option for groups to come in and present at public forum. And obviously when their ideas get to the scale where they are a proposal, then they'll need to come and, you know, it'll need to go through the same board and then council channels anyway. So that remains the same. Really what you're looking at is how you whether you have liaisons or how you use your networking, you know, to stay in touch with them, to have them come as guests, or whether you go out and see them when they have points of interest that the board might have. But I just wanted to be really clear, they still have always the option to come to public forum and as and when they need things that require a report, those will be provided.
But there's a gap there. If I can answer Dean, they come to the public forum and have their moment, and they spoke today about stormwater and about road resilience and about swimming pools and all sorts of things. So how do we address those requests coming through the public forum if the board can't discuss them? Only staff discuss them, but the board needs to discuss them to scale them up to be a report or be a proposal or respond back to that group in a way that they feel that they were connected.
I can't see why they took that opportunity off us to report back with those, because at least that way it caused discussion by our people that put through recommendations.
Just why we voted in to be.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the whole reason we're here. We're here to represent our people.
Yeah, we must have been staff.
Yeah.
So once they have raised a concern, we are then on notice that this is a thing that the community is interested in and wants an action on. Therefore, it's incumbent on us to put it onto the next agenda for the next meeting. What are we going to do, or how are we going to support, or do we this proposal or that proposal? We need to follow that up by an agenda item on the next.
Resolve it in some way.
Yeah, we need to say, yeah, we have discussed it, we've agreed that we'll do such and such, or.
And that's the gap. That's the gap, because they've had the presentation today.
Yeah.
If we say that's on the agenda for the next meeting, council go off, our staff go and write a report about it. We haven't had the discussion. So it's important.
Well, don't we have the discussion after, at the next meeting?
Well, if it becomes
If it's on the agenda, we then discuss it.
Well, here's the ladies here.
So to get an item on the agenda, you need to have a report. For a report to come, you need to go, staff need to be able to go and do the research. They might have to talk to other departments. There may be finance or budget implications. They need to consider whether it's significant. Does engagement need to happen with the community? That sort of thing. So you have to build a big picture to put into a report. I would imagine that if things like this morning that have been raised would come to maybe a networking session where the board could then discuss those things while staff are preparing whatever they need to prepare that has fallen out of those actions. But some of those actions may be just operational.
Yeah, so if I use an example of the swimming pool grant, as I understood it, Rob was saying that money needs to be rolled over to the next financial year. And so, okay, that's something we don't really need a report on. We can just say yes or no, surely.
So for you to make that decision, you do need a report. The decision needs to have a report. So that would be Eileen, who would manage the grants, would write a report back to the board to say this is what they're wanting, okay. This is the situation, these are the recommendations.
So how do we,
what's your decision?
And using that example, how do we communicate to Eileen, we want this report for the next meetings because it's been raised and we want to be able to talk about it.
And so the process, okay, Dean, did you want to say something?
Oh, I'm happy for you to have a try, Eileen, or I can give it a go. So I'll give it a go first, Dave. So you're going to receive a lot of information at public forums. We'll keep a public forum register. We've got a record of everything that's been said. When it comes to networking, you'll have a look with Eileen at those range of issues that have been raised, and you'll go through a prioritisation process to sort of think about what are the things that you want to get involved in, where do you want to go to next. And so through those discussions, you'll be able to work out what areas to focus on, where we need to do more work. So in the case of the swimming pool example that was just given, I would expect in a networking discussion, you would ask Eileen, hey, look, are we all over that? And Eileen would be able to say, yes, these are the discussions we've been having with finance. This is what they'll need to do. Rob has been given the support that he needs. We expect that you'll see a report at such and such date. And so that will be how you'll have the business confidence that the matters that are a priority to you are being worked through.
Dean, just two things out there. Number one is the fact that on the last board, we had a lot of problems where we would ask for reports and they would go on and on and on over several meetings before, if in fact we got a reply. And secondly, the decision to change what we had before, is this a national decision across New Zealand, all community boards, or is this for TCDC that have made their own decision?
The first question I can sort of part answer for you. There is Ari's team is now developing a register of what's coming up for future agendas. So those will be able to be discussed with the boards. As Donna spoke to earlier, it's not always as simple as asking for a report because, you need time for the authors to be able to stop what they're doing or reprioritise what they're doing to be able to do the assessments and do the pre-work for it. But once we have that register available, then again, that's something that we'll be able to discuss. In the same way, we'd like to have a schedule for the networking meeting so you know who you'll be networking with when. And again, the board can then be flexible and adjust that. So I think that answers part one. Part two is probably more of a governance question, I would say. So I might give Ari or Donna the first shot at that one.
So Dean, I've got a couple of questions. So the process of having the board members come before the meeting at the forum at the start. What's the point of that when they've got a network meeting, they can come and talk to there? So are we double banging up here, or are we asking people to come and raise issues here and then come again and raise them at the network meeting? Why would we do a two swing? Why don't we just have them at the network meeting?
Yeah, so sorry, through the chair. I think public forum is always open to everyone, and it should be maintained for people to come and freely be able to talk about topics of interest to them. The community board will be busy, and it will need to determine what it focuses on in its networking times.
How do we find that difference?
So a group.
How do we decide from what comes in the public forum what the board members, not the staff, see as valuable going into the network meeting?
Yeah, so we'd all work together to figure out what we would like to see in our networking meeting. So in Whangamatā,
when does that happen?
In your networking meetings, you'll go through that. So even this afternoon, you'll be able to say to Eileen, hey, look, it'd be really good for us to get some time with Whangamatā residents and ratepayers. We want to understand these 3 or 4 things in a greater level of detail. Should we do some site visits together? Should we receive them here? That's the intent of those networking meetings. But you won't want to, I mean, the board will be busy, so you won't be able to probably respond to everyone and every item that's raised at a public forum, nor do you need to. The area manager can acknowledge those interactions and do some work in the background.
But to acknowledge those interactions, the board must guide the staff on how they feel those interactions should be responded. It shouldn't be staff writing a letter off to those people who came to the board, who came to see the board members, to talk to the community board members they elected, and then leave a staff member write a reply without the community board members giving some advice or direction to the staff member.
Yeah, and I think this can all be covered in networking, and I would imagine that if Eileen was to fire off a thank you email for coming and blah, 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 that she'd be checking with Dave probably anyway. Yeah, but when it comes to substantively progressing something, then, you know, you should be able to, at your networkings, ask, hey, how is that going? And that's what the forum's for.
Can I go back to a fundamental question is, on what basis is a report required? Where do you get that authority from?
I would have thought that a motion from this board would start the action plan for a report. But at the moment, we don't have that facility. That's sort of faded away.
So just to use a very simple example, if this board was to move a motion that the light bulb at Tuna Place be removed, why can't that just be passed and actioned?
Exactly.
Why do we need put it off for a report from some consultant here, someone else over here? Let's just get it done. They want it done. We want it done. Why do we need a report?
All this is doing is loading up Eileen's workload for what she has to do with submitting reports.
Through the chair, can I just say, something like a light bulb or whatever is an actual operational thing.
Yes.
So that's where you wouldn't need to get involved in.
Well, but you don't know what we think, so excuse me. You don't know whether we think the light bulb should stay or doesn't stay, because we haven't had that discussion yet.
But that's where the discussion would be had in your networking session, and then what falls out of that is what Eileen would then go off.
Yeah, but obviously a networking session with the guy from Tuna Place who's already presented here, and we already know the background of what happened. We've got the information. It doesn't need a report. Down the table, we know that 5 years ago, that was in a plan that somebody decided to implement and to suit operational, fair enough. But they rang us up and said, the people are concerned about this, what the hell's going on? That becomes a community issue. So it's not just operational. So the next step, it's moved from an operational back into a community. So this is what we around the table discuss. So we'll hear the facts, hear your story, and then we'll make a judgment based on the information of a recommendation back to operational. Then if you don't like it, you'll have to come back to us. I think that's the process, but it's not feeling like it's a process.
And the other point is it just a matter of turning that light off? Or is it a matter of removing the pole?
Yeah, that's right.
And if the pole's removed, we're talking about over $2,000 to remove it. You know, so Dean, just to take up your point in relation to with them coming to the have their discussions here, you're only getting the viewpoint of one person who's representing it because you've told them that you only want one person representing each community. So what I'm saying is that when we go to the meetings, and I go every month to the Whangamatā meetings, where you've got a full set of ratepayers there, that you get a lot of different information. So you're not just, when the person comes to here, you're not just getting that person's.
It's not the community view.
No. I know what's in the community because we're dealing with the different groups. I know how they feel about it, and then I can tell honestly what it is, and that's what we're here for, to represent those people.
Can I just say, Dean, at the start there, you said the process basically is they come along today and talk in the public. Then Eileen goes and does the report, comes back at the networking. In a normal situation, networking wouldn't be this afternoon, it's normally a few weeks later. So that's where the big delay is, I think. We don't, Eileen's going to go away and do a report on this stuff, but some of that we might say, we just want it done straight away without a report like the Life, for instance. So it seems a big time delay. There should, I agree, there should be some motion where we should be able to put forward at the end of this meeting saying, Eileen, we want to report on this, this and this before the networking. The other stuff, don't worry about it because we just want it not done or done. And speed of process stuff is what we're trying to achieve because we are elected members here as the voice of the community. And it's a bit embarrassing when we go away and say, we're just waiting on a report. When's it coming? We don't know.
No.
We don't know if we're actually getting a report on that because we don't know. You see where we're coming from?
Yeah, okay. I'll just respond to a couple of things there, and hopefully this is the last time I need to. But and I'm happy to talk about it in the networking in a greater level of detail. So you asked a question about when is a report required. A report is required to support a decision, so when a decision is required. And there was some email correspondence that went out a month or so ago that I can recirculate, but it's also in the LGA and the terms of reference. So we can cover some of that offline. In terms of things like light bulbs and those types of things, they can be raised via a service request, they can be raised straight with the staff member, they can be raised straight with the area manager, and they will be worked on. And if it gets to a point where for whatever reason the board needs to know more about it because it's more complicated than whatever it might have seemed, then you can be briefed in the networking times, or if it actually gets to a point where a decision is required from you on a light bulb or not, and I'm just using that as an example, then a report would need to be provided for that. But in the first instance, staff will go away and listen to what's been said either via the public forum or via a service request or whatever channel it is, and try and work through that with the individuals involved. And I would encourage you at your networking to say, hey, look, Eileen, what's the update on such and such that we heard about the other day? And I think you'll find that those things do get progressed in the background.
Okay, so to answer that, you brought up the light bulb example. I believe they've done a request, they've been to the area manager, now they've come to the community board. So now there's going to be a report done on the same thing that they've tried all those avenues. It seems embarrassing that they can't get an answer from someone higher up in the staff that we're going to take the light out and we're going to leave it there and these are the reasons. It seems a long way to go around one light.
Certainly does.
So we can't have an answer today that they came for, and we may be able to give them to the networking if we discuss it, and then we could possibly give them the answer at next council meeting. But that's 6 weeks to get the light either turned on or off.
I'd say, Dean, that you consider the fact of our credibility. I mean, what's the point of us having a community board if we can't represent the people in the way that the people want us to represent them?
Yeah, look, I just simply don't know about the light bulb topic. I'm not sure if it has been progressed or if it's been raised or anything. Eileen may be able to fill you in on that this afternoon. But apart from hearing the public forum this morning, I don't have any further detail than that.
We've had emails, I think, with correspondence on it for it to be the last month at least of certain things, and we can't give an answer as elected members, and it sounds like staff can't either.
I just through the chair, I got a call from the guy who was putting the light bulb up, the pole. He says, I'm putting the pole up, I'm putting the light bulb, and the people are gathering around me and said they don't want it. What do I do? I said, well, I didn't know you'd put in the bulb. I didn't know it was going to happen. how's this doing? He said, well, this was on a schedule 5 years ago and we've decided to do it. I said, well, things have changed since then. You should have come to the community board and had the discussion, because we're going to get a liaison guy here that goes over and talks to the locals. So I said, finish the job, go away, put the light bulb in it and we'll deal with it. Now we're trying to deal with it and months go by and we still haven't dealt with it. So we need to deal with it.
That's one example.
Okay, can we have a discussion about this in the networking meeting? We'll go back to the report that's in front of you. So it's up to this board to decide whether or not you want to appoint liaison reps. You don't have to go down that track. You can say you don't wish to do that. DP board yesterday actually deferred their decision to a future meeting, so they can actually go out to their community to see if the community still want to have liaison reps, because they have been used to having a liaison rep. So this board can do that as well. We can change that resolution if you wish to defer it to a future meeting to come back and have another discussion about it. But at the moment, the report is asking the board, do you want to do it? Do you not want to do it? If you do want to do it, do you want to appoint the people now? Or you can defer to a later meeting and we can have another discussion about it.
So I would like to move that we do defer this meeting, defer this decision until we get further information from our networking groups to see how they want to liaison with us. I feel the work that we should have a connector. We should have somebody allocated that is whoever knows, say, let's talk about harbour care, that Mark's involved with harbour care, make sure you keep in control with them. But until we understand how the system works, I feel very uncomfortable by saying we are going to be the people that's going to go along to these meetings and report back to us, and then they report through to us, and it's messy in my mind.
Okay, so the resolution, we'll change the resolution to say, number 1, receives the Whangamatā Community Board Liaison Representatives Report dated 6th of January 2023. 2, defer the decision to a future community board meeting.
Yeah, we defer it to a networking meeting, because then we can.
Networking meetings, you cannot make a decision or have a resolution.
I mean, the other thing I fear is now the public going to read this and go, hang on, and now our voice has been taken away from each community group they used to having.
Well, I don't think it's taken away. What we're deferring it, so we still might do it. We just want to know how to do it.
You see, the typical council answer, yeah. Defer it, thinking about it, and come back to you.
Well, yeah, I'm just saying it's up there. You can change it. I'm just putting it up there. I feel uncomfortable at the moment going to the harbour care or to the enterprise Whangamatā and say, you're coming to a network meeting and I'm coming to talk to you, but I can't talk to the meeting about what you're talking about. I need to understand how the system works.
Yep, so we can just defer it to a future meeting. Sorry, I didn't really word that second.
Sorry, I've just got deferred the decision to establish the liaison representatives to allow for further consultation, and we'll report back to a future meeting. Yeah.
So is that consultation going to be done by us, or is it going to be done by the council?
I can go to those community groups that we've listed there to see if they still wish to have a liaison rep. There may be other groups out there that wish to have a liaison rep. That's a discussion.
I don't think it's about the process. I think we're after how that community group can communicate through the board on their issues. How it's done. At the moment, I don't know how it's done. It used to be we could sit here and say, I'm representing 3 views, I'll tell you what's going on.
So you mean just ask them, how do you want it done?
Yeah, so it's staff, I mean, what he's saying is, how do they come to this
I want the staff to say, how do those boards, those community network communicate to us? And if it's through the network meeting only, well, what are we doing going to a liaison meeting when they're talking to us? And should we just be connected? Should we just be something else? That's my concern.
I can come back and once I've got all that information, I can come back and address that with the board.
Okay, so we have a recommendation that we consider the fact of adjourning it for that time. Do you want to read it out now?
It still may not be right, but you guys can tell me. Deferring the so you've received it, and number 2 is to defer the decision to establish the liaison representatives to allow staff to further establish the process and we'll report back to a future meeting.
No, not a future meeting, to report back as soon as possible. We want this thing addressed
By the next meeting.
by the next meetings. That is, so we keep the thing hot.
Remember that
It won't-
it's 3 weeks, isn't it?
Yeah, so it won't be at the March meeting, it will be the
It'll
April
be the
meeting.
May meeting.
May meeting.
Yeah, I don't care. We'll talk to them as well.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's any concerns about getting discussion, have a chat and say what they want to do. But we need staff to give us the guidance about how the process works.
Process is all about.
Yeah, process.
Right. All in favour of that, say
Oh,
aye.
we've got to say,
We're going to move for it.
Oh, okay.
I was happy to move, but
I'll second it.
All in favour, say aye. Against? Carry. Whangamatā Bowling Club. We have item 4.1, which is a request for a extended lease area.
I'd like to move that we adopt this.
Can I ask a question before?
Yeah, you can move in second and then debate it.
Oh, so you move first and then debate?
Yeah, so normally move in second and then debate it. Somebody else.
Have a move for it, please.
I've got to move.
Got that? Okay, second. Okay, move.
No, they haven't got a second. No second,
Okay.
so it doesn't stand. We've got a second.
Can I second it? It's checking. I'll second it.
Okay, so we can debate.
Yeah, I just have a question. Why is it 20 years? That seems a very long way.
Good morning, everybody. It's 20 years. They have requested 20 years, and it's just based on the last term that they had, which was 20 years. So they've held the lease since 2003. But you can make it shorter if you wish. You can set a new term.
Any discussion on the 20 years? If anybody,
No discussion.
no, Neil, have you got any?
It just seems a long term, a very long time. And I don't know whether future changes or things that we can't anticipate might require that facility for something else. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. I'm not against the bowling club by any means. I support what they do and so on. But I just think 20 years is a long time to bind a council over a piece of land. And I don't see any problem with having, say, like a 10-year plus a right of renewal of 10 years if the council is happy with it.
Through the chair, I just wanted to make a comment that the other clubs on that property also have similar expiry dates, which are in 2040. So that was another reason. It was just to align the expiry dates.
This should be consistent.
Should be consistent.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
All right, so all in favour of leaving it at 20 years, say aye.
I agree. Yeah, I agreed. There's a couple of resolution things in them. I think you should read them out. Does he read them out?
Okay, for the motions.
Yeah.
So the suggested resolutions are receive a new lease for the Whangamatā Bowling Club Incorporated report dated 22nd of October and recommend the council advertise its proposal to grant a new lease to the Whangamatā Bowling Club Incorporated at 500 Rutherford Road, Whangamatā. It's known as the Whangamatā Sports Reserve in accordance with the council's community leases and licenses to occupy policy for a term of 20 years.
Thank you.
All those in favour say aye. Against the thing, carry.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next one is the surf club one, so that I just asked Dennis if you take the chair for that, please.
We've got John Maston on board to talk about it.
Thank you. Good morning, John. Because I'm involved with the total water, I'm going to stand down and Dennis, Deputy Chair, will take over for me on this one.
Fine.
Yeah,
That's, it's all.
still in the back row as much.
Well, John, can you speak to your report, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and board members. So the Whangamatā Surf Lifesaving Club has approached us on a few different matters. And if you like, you can sort of summarise it up into 4 parts. First part is they want to extend their existing building within the existing lease area and put a new little shed on. And the staff and the recommendations there are saying, we think that has limited impact overall and we support that. And the committee clerk will add on a further bit to the recommendation, just adding clarity that we're giving landlords consent to that, as well as consent as landlord under the Resource Management Act to their application. The second part is to extend their lease areas to include a few new bits of land, being the car park, a little bit out the front and a little bit out the back. Staff are recommending support for 2 of those 3 and not supporting the bit out the front adjacent to the closer to the water.
Is
The
that,
third one,
John, can I just ask you, is that area 2 on the plan proposal to extend towards beachfront? Is that the piece of land?
yeah, that's the bit we're saying don't
Thank you.
extend the lease over.
Yeah.
Yep. The third piece is surrender a little bit of the existing lease area, which is along the street frontage. Back in sort of 2016, there was changes to the car parking there and a footpath was laid. And effectively what we did in doing those works was actually encroached on the bit of the lease area that we had already granted to the surf club. So the surf club it's the opportunity just to tidy up that and reflect what's currently on the ground. Then the fourth matter is really another tidy up, is in respect of the Toes in the Water shed, which provides disability services and access to the beach for people with different disabilities. And they use that shed to store bits and bobs. So what we're suggesting is that should really be tidied up by being the subject of a proposed lease that would also be advertised. And in terms of term for all of these things, we're aligning them all to the end 29th of June 2030, which aligns with the current expiry of the Surf Club's current building lease. What that then does, it gives the council the opportunity in 2030 to reconsider it all as one package rather than having separate leases for different bits over different times.
Very good.
Any question?
Questions? Yeah, well, through the chair. Yeah, I just think John's report's fantastic. It's pretty thorough. It does raise the issue around this piece of land, but I understand, I've looked at the Reserve Management Act and how it impacts on people's rights. And I think the decision's quite a valid, and I support their decision, quite honestly.
If the motion is put, I will vote against it. I think area 2 should be included in the lease. The reason for that is, as Speaker Bruce this morning indicated, that, you know, they have 200 nippers in their group training. There's a lot of parents with their kids and extra car parking and use of, you know, I've seen it on tournaments with that place is full of boats and that sort of thing. Even actually, I think the last tournament, the boats were all over Williamson Park. So I would support them having the larger area. So.
I just to add my piece, just to add to it. I understand what Member Neil's saying. My concerns are that when there's nippers on there, that they just use it like everybody else uses it. They just take over that piece of beach. When the surf carnivals are there, certainly they bring in a lot of gear and they'll use that part of the beach. But for most of the year, from most probably after the busy piece, it's pretty empty. So they just have a patrol which they take out on the beach, and they've got access through a road to do that onto the beach. They've got parking in area 1, which they continue and expand. I think that's a fair deal. But area 2, I thought was just a piece of land that people are going to walk along and they can use it like everybody else. That was my feeling anyway.
I do have a question. It's probably through to Eileen, but that's all right. So when the surf carnivals are on, and they have their caravans and other facilities on other parts of the reserve, not here, but through the Esplanade, do they seek approval for that, or?
Yes, they apply for a reserve concession through the Parks and Open Spaces team.
So would that be a similar sort of thing of this piece of
No,
land?
if you give them the lease, they,
No, if you don't give the lease and they want to use it.
yeah, they would put that as part of their reserve application. They would just add it on.
So if the surf club is having a big surf carnival and they take up the whole area of the Williamson Park and Ability, they apply for a reserve concession on that as well anyway. So they're already doing that now.
Yeah.
They're just asking the more permanent stuff out the front to be theirs.
No, I can understand what they're trying to get. I can see what they're trying to get. I'm not trying to say it's a bad thing, the surf club. I'm just thinking that they can share it. That's what I'm thinking, you know, because if they don't, if they take it over, then they've got rights to bowl out the whole thing, and access is prevented. Is that right? That's how I read it. They can bowl out it.
It's their land.
It's their land, isn't it? If they get it.
I'm not sure, John, would they?
Bowl out. Would they bowl? Could they bowl out there, John?
Yes, they could. However, we would have a clause in the lease that ensures that the public still have the rights to pass over that portion. You know, it's part of that foreshore pathway. And what we've also just seen, you know, with these cyclones and things, and the boardwalk being munted in various places, it's quite foreseeable that sea line will push back a little bit further, and even further restrict the ability of the public just to have a walk along the top of the dunes.
Yeah, thank you. So it's yeah, you know, I understand their needs. I'm just trying to balance it with the needs of the community. That's all.
Well, Mr. Chairman, irrespective, even if the lease is granted over 2, I mean, people walk through the existing lease area as though it's not leased anyway. So I don't see a problem with it.
But they could bother.
Yes. Yeah, I don't have a problem.
And if you look at the area, an area existing lease is quite a substantial lease right out to the footpaths, right out to the walkway.
Yeah.
So they control that area completely, and they're just looking for that corner piece, which is really where people shortcut across that corner to where those tables and chairs are. So it's an access way, and it would be disappointing to think that they could restrict that access if people wanted to walk over there. If they said, look, we would, I don't know. I just feel that at the moment they can apply to have that area when they've got an event. And they have about 5 or 6 events a year, but most of the time the area is open to walk through. So I can't see why they can't continue that way and apply for it when they want to.
I have a further question. Area 3, is that where the toes in the water is currently situated?
Area 1.
The toes in the water is situated on the bottom left-hand corner of Area 1. Area 3 is just the area that's got the fence, the trees, and a waste skippy type.
Go down further in the report, there's a whole plan of it.
No, I can
Keep going.
Well, I see you.
Keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you see it.
Any further questions? So now we need a mover and seconder for the report, is that correct?
Well, I moved it, no.
I have to already move in a second.
I would like to move that we accept the resolution. You have to read the resolutions out.
Yeah.
Stuff for the director to do it himself.
So what you could do is we could move in second to receive it.
Yeah.
And we could break it down.
Break it down into pattern sections.
Yeah.
So I'd like to move that we receive the report.
I'll second.
Okay, and then you read the next statement out.
So then resolution number 1 Received that Whangamatā Surf Live and Southern Club Incorporated request to extend the leased area reported 27th, 22. So we need to move and second that.
We just.
So 3 on the, we're going through these now.
Yeah.
Another page.
Hey, that's a good one.
Oh, see, you got it, yeah.
Yeah, so number 1, we need to,
So do we want to
do you want to do them individually or?
Individually.
Do them all together.
Can you?
Well, yeah,
Can have a look.
but you could vote on each one.
I think we should look at each one just to make sure we're right. The first one, is that right? So I'm like to move that we
no, it's not. No, number 1 is what I just read out.
What is received.
We've got the receipt.
Got that one?
So number 2, do we want to read number 2 out?
Yeah, read it out, please.
Recommends that the council advise the Whangamatā Surf Lifesaving Club Incorporated request to extend the leased area of the premises located on part of Williamson Park 418 Ocean Road, Whangamatā, to include this area 1 and 3 as depicted below.
Right.
For a term expiring 29 June 2030.
Yeah.
But excluding the area occupied by the toes in the water shed with a cost of advising being met by the Whangamatā Community Board.
Okay, so what does that mean? So
I can answer that.
get John to explain.
John, could you explain number 2 resolution there?
Was it, through you, Mr. Chairman, was it more about the cost or was it the content?
Yeah, about the cost and why it was separated out.
Yeah, to the 2030, so just explain basically what we're looking at there.
Okay, so one, if let's assume that the board supports going out to advertise these various changes. So we'll have to advertise in the paper, giving people a calendar month to submit objections for or against the various proposals. And in those requesting those proposals, they can request a hearing, in which case if there are any such requests, that then goes through to council. So there's a cost of about $800 to advertise this matter. Likewise, on the last item, the board considered there's an advertising cost there too. So we'd obviously combine both in one ad to reduce the cost. So in the areas in themselves was the area that's in the car parking, the little bit out the bottom there where the little bit of fence and bollards is. But it excluded the toes in the water area, which would go to the Toes in the Water Trust charity as a separate lease matter.
Okay, so key thing is, do we support the advertising cost being met by the Whangamatā Community Board? That's key here for Toes in the Water.
That's what we.
Okay, so I'm happy to move that we do. I think it's an important piece of work that's been done and really no cost to the council or community board at all. So this is a small fee that we sound like we've got to share. So I'm happy to support that.
I can second that. Yep. So I second that.
You need to check it out though, if it's right and ask them to move on.
Oh, sorry, you need to move it. All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? So now number 3. Recommends that the council decline the Whangamatā Surf Live and Southern Incorporated request to extend their leased area of the premise located as part of Williamson Park 418 Ocean Road, Whangamatā, to include area 2 as depicted below.
So that's the area 2. So get John just to explain it. Is area 2 on the map? Is that right?
Yep. So,
Yep. So this is the bit closest to the water.
Yeah.
Just this.
Yeah.
So we need to move that, do we?
Well, it's up to people if they want to move it. So I'd like to move that we decline this. Hold on a second, let's get this right. I just got to get this right. It does say decline. So I'd like to move to support this resolution. Sorry, this resolution number 3.
Support.
Sorry, I support. Couldn't decline.
I'll second
All those in favour?
Aye.
Against?
Aye.
You want that recorded?
Yes. Yeah. Right, and I'm swinging on this too, so. Okay. Okay.
Number 4, recommends that the council approve the Whangamatā Surf Lifesaving Incorporated partial surrender of the lease of the premises located part of Williamson Reserve 4 Anderson Road, shown as area 6, is it?
No, 4.
Oh, 4, sorry, yeah, backwards, as pictured below.
Yeah, I'm happy to move this. I think this is making total sense. It's moving the boundary back from the footpath that they own, so.
So we've got.
I'll move.
I'll second. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Right, so we're at number 5, recommends that the council approve as landowners the Whangamatā Surf Lifesaving Club extension of its club rooms by 134 square metres and erect a new shed of 24 square metres, both within the current lease area.
There is an extra bit of wording that the chief executive asked to be added to the end of that resolution that reads, and consents to the resource consent application for those building extensions.
Right.
Okay, so it's not the existing lease area, it's they're extending it onto, which we can see in the picture there, is what they're saying, so she's saying.
No, she's just saying it also includes any consents.
Any consents for the building? Yes, also correct. All right. So can you read that out again with that carrying?
Recommends the council approve as landowner the Whangamatā Surf Lifesaving Club extension to its club rooms by 134 square metres and erection of a new shed of 24 square metres, both within its current leased area, and consents to the resource consent application for those building extensions.
Right. So, yeah, happy to move. Second.
Favour?
Aye.
Can I,
Oh, sorry.
sorry, can we discuss this?
Yeah,
Just for clarification. Is the area that they want, this new build, is that is shown on the dotted lines on this drawing?
Yeah, that was what I said at the start, it's not the existing area, because it's obviously being extended
It's
into.
being extended, so that's within the dotted area shown.
That would be a John question.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, we're giving consent there to the extension of their current building, which is within their current lease area. And it also includes their proposal to erect a new shed out the back of the building, also within their current lease area. So nothing to do with any of the other proposals to extend the lease area. This is concerning just within what they've already got. Okay,
Yeah.
and they've already applied for a resource consent to do those works, but they need our consent in that process as landowner.
The respect, Mr. Chairman, don't we need to know where that enlarged building is? I know it's within the leased area, but you've just been asked that we want to build something bigger, but we don't know where it is.
I think it's going beachfront forward. Is that right, John?
So that's
So when he's talking the front, I think I'm talking the beachfront where the dotted line is the new shed, is that correct, in the site plan that you've got? Take it with that.
I'd have to call that up to see the detail.
Yes, I mean, from what I can understand, you've got the 2 existing buildings and you've got the dotted bit at the front. I assume that's the extent.
That's what I wanted to clarify.
Yeah, that's what my question at the start was, is it the existing building area or is it for the, looks like you're extending it out the front towards the surf, is that what you're saying?
Mr. Chairman, if we can just wait a moment, I'll ask Nicole if you just call up, put up the plan on the screen.
Yeah, that shed that you're talking about actually goes to the rear of the building of.
Yeah, so when we're saying the rear though, you're talking the beachfront side, is that what we can?
No, the rear,
No,
the rear
the-
being the park side closest to Blackie's.
Well, what are the dotted lines
So
on
what's
the
the
plan?
plan? We don't have that in the plan, that's all.
No, okay, I'll pull that up if I can find it. Just one moment.
A plan will help us all clarify.
That's saying back here somewhere, yeah.
Yeah, there's a shed part that's going on the back and the extension of the surf club are going on the front, but like we need clarification.
What's the dotted line there? What's in the picture?
Oh, here we go. How do we share this? Donna? How am I able to share this technical help, please?
So up the top right-hand corner by your leave button, don't hit leave.
Oh, share.
Button,
Yes.
and you want to share the screen that your map and plan is on for pictures.
That's it.
Right.
Right. Okay.
Can you do
So-
full screens? Right.
So, Mr. Chairman, if you look there, you can see facing the road, there's two hatched areas. They're the ones that they're extending. So one is out near the car park, one is out the back, and then you've got the shed, the new shed to the bottom, more the bottom right.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
No, that's the new.
Yeah, those are the two extensions. Yeah. So these things out the front here, John, are they just the deckings currently that they're? Right, could be right. Okay, got it.
So, Mr. Chairman,
So we're back
could we
to,
not have that as part of on our document? Because otherwise we don't know what we're approving.
Yeah, so we obviously don't have this in our report, which would be, should it be in our report?
Can ask them to add it.
Yeah.
The supplier. They do it.
We can add it to the minutes.
Okay, so that, we'll have that.
Gives us clarity.
So that we have to,
We don't put it in.
no, but we need to, so are we?
I think, excuse me, point of order, I think that's incorrect. You're asking us to approve something that we are going to be given that information minutes at a later
The
date.
minutes won't be confirmed until your next meeting, so you'll see that.
Yeah, so at that point, we have the right to then, just theoretically speaking, to say, well, no, this is not what we're told at the meeting.
Yes, so when it comes to your minutes confirmation.
Yeah.
You have the right then, if the minutes for correctness aren't right.
Okay.
So we can make a question on the next one, okay?
Through the chair, I can actually circulate this in the meantime to the board members.
We can receive it before the next meeting, so we're still on number 5, correct?
Yes.
So we've got hearing and voting.
Evans, but Drew asked a question,
Yeah,
so
so-
now it's got a vote on it.
So all those in favour? Against? So that's
One to go.
so it's recommends that the council advise a proposal to lease the Toes in the Water. The Toes in the Water Charitable Trust that a portion of area 1 below occupied by the Toes in the Water shed plus access for a term of expiring 29 June 2030.
So that, as John said, brings all those leases into one, then it can be re-evaluated at that point. So kind of makes sense to.
Don't want to move that.
Yeah, I'm happy to move again.
Second.
Those in favour?
Aye.
Yes. Carry.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Nicole. Fantastic.
Thank you, Mr.
No
Chairman.
worries.
Right there on the big one.
To cover
I've got one.
CAPEX and
Yes.
CAPEX. Move on. Yeah, that's cool. Isn't it? The CAPEX work program 2022, 2023 with optional, with operational information updates.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, Andrew.
Hello, Andrew. How are you?
Before we start, could I refer you to page 2? This is further to your comments about the discussion about the light in Tuna Place.
Yes.
Right, now. It's in the work programme as being programmed for February, but because of the bad weather, it was delayed. Now, I don't know, excuse me, I don't know why they put a new streetlight in Tuna Place. You don't know, and the person who stood up in front of you some time ago didn't know either. But there is someone somewhere here, some staff member, who will be able to respond to why a new streetlight went in Tuna Place. So what I propose to do is contact that person, and I know who it is, and ask him for an explanation, because there must be a reason, and there may be people who want the streetlight in Tuna Place. Obviously, there are some that don't. And I will pass that through to Eileen, who can distribute the email to you all, so you have an understanding of why the streetlight went up. And then rather than expect reports to explain all this, it's a quick and simple way of finding out why it went in, and then you can make a decision whether it stays in or you decide you want it taken out. How does that sit with you?
Can we have that by our networking meeting?
Well, we've already decided if we want it out.
Through the chair, if I can, Andrew, I think that'd be great to find that out. I think the board, well, my feeling is, isn't it, that whatever you do, don't take the pole away. If you have to turn the light off, turn the light off, but hold it until we understand what the issues are, because we've got a group that don't want it. We might have a group that want it, we don't know. So if you find out the next steps for us, and then we'll make a decision accordingly.
I will do that, Terry. Very quickly as well.
Don't take the pole away.
No, we won't take the pole away. Right. Could I bring your attention to the Whangamatā Boardwalk extension? And I've got Jamie Boyle, our coastal scientist, here to give his opinion. If he's still here, Jamie? Yes, he's still here. You're on mute, Jamie. Ah, there he is. Jamie, do you want to explain to the board your thinkings about the extension, the boardwalk?
No.
He's there somewhere. Jamie, are you there? No, it doesn't appear to be. Well, I'll tell you. We had a discussion this morning about it, and since the Cyclone Gabriel and the storms we've had, if we built if the boardwalk was built, it will be inundated with sand from the beach and the coast and be inundated, and we are questioning whether it's prudent to continue with the construction of the boardwalk as a consequence of that. Now, Jamie's got some, or had some overhead photographs to show the area and how it was inundated with sand when Cyclone Gabriel came through, and he's questioning whether we should actually build the boardwalk, which I wanted you to discuss that with him, but he doesn't appear to be around.
Oh, was it that? Sorry, I was just on a call. I was on an important call. Are you talking to me now?
Yeah, ditch the call.
Yeah, I have.
Good. Can you explain to the board members, Jamie, please, what you discussed with me and Derek this morning, and if you can, put up on the screen the photographs that you sent to me and Derek, and have a talk about what your opinion is.
Yeah, I'll share my screen. The lines aren't too easy to see, but
okay.
Check it on. Just let me know if you can see it.
Yeah, okay, mate. Thank you.
Yep, you got those?
Yeah, there it is. Do you want to make it a bit bigger? If you can.
Yep.
Good seeing it in real life.
Yeah.
Is that good?
Okay, where you go, Jamie?
Yeah, so I guess from my perspective, putting hard infrastructure along the coast, knowing what we know with historical shoreline change and what's predicted to come, including the 1 in 200 year event we got from Gabrielle, putting hard infrastructure on the coast is really a management nightmare. And you can see that with Island View at the moment. Car parks almost threatened by the shoreline. And you've got various bits of infrastructure along this part of Whangamatā where there's stairs and things like that have to be put in place to try and manage access. So when you're thinking about putting a hard piece of boardwalk infrastructure along this piece of reserve, if we get short, it's probably not if, but when we get shoreline erosion back to this line, you can see this is 1959, this kind of faint coloured line, if you can see that. Can everyone see that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we know the shoreline's been back here, in the 60s, and it obviously goes forward and backwards over time. But in terms of putting a boardwalk and then trying to manage access, you begin to get into a lot of strife. So as it is now, we can use a bobcat or something similar to cut into the dune and re-slope the access way. That's the easiest and cheapest method of managing access along the coast. You can put stairs in, but examples from Mātarangi, Pauanui, and Whangamatā show that when you do get severe erosion, that those pieces of infrastructure become damaged, either unusable or costly to replace. So that's why I'm recommending we don't put hard infrastructure along for access. It's going to become an issue, and but yeah, there might be alternative options other than the current design, but as it stands from a scientific point of view, it's kind of a risky move. Happy to answer any questions.
I got a question for you, Jamie.
Yep.
So first of all, I'll talk about the construction of the hard construction along there. These boardwalk were going to be pre-made panels that were put down on the ground and removable if necessary. Though also, we talked about the beach access, and you'll see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and actually 6 beach accesses along that part of the beach, and we were going to reduce them to 4 beach accesses cut on an angle so that they don't wash out with the current wave surge going up there, up onto that boardwalk, which would sit on top of that high part of the sandhill along that edge to just give it a place for people to walk along there. Do you still feel that those are not suitable project ideas to make this a better place for people to use?
I just think it's going to impede access eventually. We know that the shoreline will come back at some stage. It might build out for the next 20 years, but it might come back over the next 20 years. So you can see 1980. Oops.
But it's the beach access ways, the straight beach access ways that cause the issue. The water goes up through there. There's no retention on the actual spinifex that's holding the sand together beside it. And that's what washes the beaches out. So by cutting the access ways down on angles, you protect the actual access way by the planting that you put each side of it.
Now, the access ways don't cause erosion.
Well, that's where the water flows up through them.
Yeah, but the erosion is caused by the loss of the sand.
If you have a look at the beach when the surf is surging, it surges up through those beach access.
Oh yeah, I totally understand that. That's an impact from the storm surge, but it doesn't cause erosion. Erosion happens when the sand levels on the beach are low, and then so the water level is high, and that bites into the shoreline. So that's what's happened over time in Whangamatā. I mean, you can have less access ways, but it's not going to mean less erosion. It's not really much to do with it. It's the fact that you
reduce the access ways from 8 down to 4, you're actually reducing the amount of erosion.
No.
If they're fully, planted out properly and work, they actually does resist erosion. Otherwise,
No, because you look at South Whangamatā and there's limited access ways there, but the whole shoreline's eroded, so it's nothing to do with the access way. It's when the sand levels are reduced and the water level's high, that's what causes erosion. So that, yeah, I mean, I understand there's too many access ways there, so that is one thing, but regardless of how many access ways you do put in, if there's 4, we're still going to have to manage 4, and there's not currently enough shoreline to have angled access ways because the width is too narrow. You'd usually have an angled access way if you had a big wide dune, but here that's not the case. So it wouldn't really work at this location.
So jumping up the boardwalk being a panelled section that sits on the ground and can be removed, is that considered a hard structure?
Yeah, I'd call that hard infrastructure. Yep.
So you don't think that's suitable? It would help the sand.
Well, if you've got your hard infrastructure along the top of the dune here, and we need to, if the shoreline recedes back to say 1980, which is around here, it's hard to see. We're going to somehow have to manage the access way, and if there's hard stuff in the way here, we can't pull that access way back into the land like we would normally do. So you'd have to move that boardwalk.
Well, we can lift it up and move it.
Well, what is? Oh, sorry, through the chair. What is the real objective of boardwalk? I mean, this is a new community board. We're coming into this decision that's already been made, but we need to have a bit more history. My question is, what is the objective of the boardwalk?
So if you look at the existing boardwalk, is put past the circular. Okay, that boardwalk there is people who were struggling to walk or difficulty getting on difficult undulating surfaces could enjoy the beach as much as everybody else. Those who could go down the beach could go down the beach, and those who didn't would like the boardwalk to be able to sit up and enjoy the vista and what we're at of the beach. When you go across the top of the Esplanade dune, it's undulating all the way along, and this was to make us a level platform that people could utilise and walk along. And they've found out in the past by putting boardwalks in and encourage people to use them, they take away this issue of everybody walking through the dunes and trying to get down the beach different ways. They stick to the boardwalks, very popular. I've done in Mount Whanganui, if you have a look over there, they've really been able to plant out their beaches in a way they get the protection because everybody uses the boardwalk. So it's a way to encourage people to walk in the areas where there's the less problems and less erosion issues around them, because once you take one track through the sand and the sand's broken up away from the plants, the wind blows it up and it starts to erode. By that, we can plant out those areas of the beach so people can, and we would have the access to the beaches up only where the boardwalk was coming up, 1 or 2 axes along, all the way along to Hunt Park was what it was going to be planned, but this was just the top of the Esplanade.
Okay, so through the chair, so Jamie, is it so? What you're suggesting today, from being the scientist, is that you're saying we need to make the decision whether we're going to take the gamble of putting the boardwalk in, whether we're going to look at 1980 erosion, 1959 on 2017. So basically, you want us to gamble and guess whether we put it in or not, because you can't give an idea of what's going to happen and see. No one can. So the 1959 data, is that taken off photos or how's that worked out?
Oh yeah, so it's taken off satellite, old aerial imagery, yeah, and mapped out by hand. So this green line is University of Auckland's post Gabrielle shoreline, and that fits. You can see it fits the just the drone imagery that you can see here. That's after Gabrielle, and their shoreline that they digitised is exactly the same, pretty much. So that's how that process is done. They draw a line on the image.
Okay. So in your scientific opinion, you're saying you want us to guess what's going to happen in the future?
I think my opinion is, if what we know now and what is potentially coming with sea level rise and climate change, putting hard infrastructure along the coast within the dynamic coastal margin is risky.
But you said before that you're not sure whether it will look like 1980 or go to 2017, but it could have a lot more area there.
Yeah, it could do. I'll just show you. So this is model data from. This is our Royal Haskellning model data, and you can see that's Let me take that off. Take those off. So they modelled the current 2020 1% AEP storm line, and this is the 2040. This yellow line's 2070 and the red's 2120. So that's basically using beach profile data and satellite imagery data, along with how the coast has changed to model what would happen to the coast over time with sea level rise included. So you can see that they don't expect the shoreline to be here until 2070, but when you look at this event here, it's almost at the 2040 line. So there's a lot of uncertainty around modelling and how storms behave. So
this is your modelling there. You're saying to us that by 2070, that may be that yellow line?
Yeah, that's the modelled line. Yep. But that's not to say that that line is going to happen. It could be further seaward. It could be further landward.
Okay.
So but what we do know is it's not a guess. It's using real data.
The one you showed us earlier was you said it could be 2017. You know, so it's hard to understand, to be honest.
Yeah, it's quite technical. I can't really explain it in this situation, but if you wanted to meet and discuss it, I could go through it in a bit more detail and make it a bit simpler.
So back to the first, Terry had the question about, in your scientific opinion, putting a wooden boardwalk is not good for, it'll erode and it'll disappear.
No, I'm just saying it's risky and it will become an implication for managing access to the coast and potentially other things around how that boardwalk behaves. So you know, if the coast erodes, you're going to have more windblown sand, and so that's going to be moving around here, going on your boardwalk, making a bit of a nightmare.
From your diagram, Jamie, that you've got on screen at the moment, would you agree that the sea has retreated since 1959?
The sea has retreated?
Well, the coast has retreated, whatever.
It's growing, it's expanding.
It's fluctuated, so I'll zoom in a bit.
So we're not at 1959. Tide doesn't come up to 1959, does it? Now?
No, but it just fluctuates. So it goes, that's 2017, this is 2023. This line's 1944, 66. So it moves backwards and forwards.
But if you walk down the gate, you see a lot of infrastructure that was previously covered by sand dunes, which have now been exposed.
So they're obviously
clear. It's coming.
They've been putting hard infrastructure in there for many years. Because I mean, the exposed stuff now, I'm not sure when it was put in, but it must have stayed there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know, got sand growing over it because it's been exposed now. So, do you know when those original ones were put in there?
1978, 1980, or something like that.
So the decision, obviously, the other day was made by Digger to go down there and take them out. Why was that decision made? Were you part of that?
Yeah, I decided that. Yep, that was decided because they're not doing anything really, and they're just hazardous if they get broken up by storm activity.
Okay, so they've been there since the 80s, and now they could become a hazard.
They were buried, and now they're exposed, and they're not doing anything other than being in place and becoming a potential risk.
Have you got enough information to be able to make a decision on whether to continue with this project or not?
I think, Andrew, when we get to the annual plan discussions around what's in and what's out, I think this is what I was going to raise any rate about whether we defer this or whether we continue it on. So maybe we can have that discussion at that time.
Okay.
Because there's quite a few deletions in that discussion.
Well, there's another, if you deleted this one or deferred it, there's another 195,000.
Yeah, we can maybe move things around, you know, it's up to discussion on the board, but we can.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. On another one, the Island View car park, the new one, construction will start on site on the 11th of April.
Thank you.
Okay, that's just for your information.
Yeah.
And it will be finished probably within about 2 or 3 weeks. So excuse me, probably by end of April, beginning of May, subject to the weather.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any more questions?
Yeah, I've got, we're just going through this line by line, or just pick out pieces we want, Mr. Chair. How
Yeah.
we-
Whatever you want to do, Terry, yeah.
You want to go through line by line or what, Terry?
Well, I've got a couple to raise. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So parks and utilities, we're just going to cruise on through that. Furniture, street furniture, cruise through that. The harbour cycle pedestrian access way. This is the Whangamatā up to Brenton Place track, which was decided not to go ahead and form the track with any Hogan type path, but to continue the track. Then put some stairs down the hill, which were put in. Access ways. At the bottom of the hill, there is a stormwater pond that has grown over with a pipe that goes through to the estuary. And the area around there is turned into a mud peak that you can't pass through it. So that budget was $110,000. It was 30 grand I spent, that was most probably spent on the steps.
Yeah.
I'm asking if they had extra funds sitting in there can dig out the stormwater pond and make it active. And a short piece of raised boardwalk between the stairs and the current track be installed so people can still continue to use it. That's
Fine,
my.
I'll get someone to look at that.
Okay. That's the other one that I'd like to talk. Anybody else on that page or not?
Just in relation to the car park ceiling, that bottom one, there was a question asked, why is it green for that when in fact it states that the cost of these sites is greater than the available budget, therefore the price was not accepted.
Yes. I think it's green based on the first bullet point that they were completed in September, but the other one should be red. Yeah, it should be red. Half green, half red.
Yeah. The Nipper construction I can ask about looks like they're progressing well and they look like they're on task to finish that by the end of the financials.
Yep, absolutely.
They look like they're doing a good job, so thank you for that.
No problem.
The cycle track from Headlington Road to Causeway Bridge. We were waiting for roading to come and sit with the board and give us some options around what to do with that. I've got some explanations in here, but I still think there's some discussion required to understand the $200,000 of how to get the best spend out of that, as opposed to just extending the footpath on the right-hand side. Don't know how the board feels about it, but I don't think we've had that discussion in full to understand the pluses and minuses of where that money should go.
I think we were still waiting for a report about a cheaper bridge option.
So, so did you hear that, Andrew? There was an
Yes,
option.
I did. I'll
Brady were coming back to us on that.
I'll activate Ed. It's a shame he's left. Yeah. Okay. Noted, Terry. Thank you.
Andrew, just on that same page, Island View car park.
What about it?
That it was going to start in June, but we understood it was April was beginning of that work. Is that?
It's starting. Island View car park starts on the 11th of April.
Thank you.
Okay, and will take approximately 2 or 3 weeks to complete.
Thank you.
Okay.
No problem.
So I'd like to go to page, the new Beach Road facility toilets and the Martin Road and the Island View Road ones.
Yeah.
So they've been completed and thank you for they look fantastic and working.
Yep, they're very good.
We've got some excess funds in there that 60 grand that we were looking to see if they could be used to help paint the water tanks around the Martin Road facility there to bring it up to some sort of standard. Has that been considered?
No. But we can do.
Available?
But we can do. Well, the budget's there. I think Martin Road. Yeah, I think we have another about 20,000 left.
Can you paint a couple of tanks for that?
And also the walls along the front of the skateboard park, please, Andrew, it's a dirty green colour looking, it could do with a facelift when the tanks are done.
Can I suggest, Eileen, that we document these requests so I can send them on to the people who will action the work? Is that all right?
Yeah.
To answer both of your questions, yes, we can do it. I've just got to action the people who will do it to confirm exactly what we're going to do and how much it's going to cost.
Can I add to that one? Can I add to that one too? In the last storm, the cover above the skate park is just about ripped right off, so it needs to be looked at as well.
Yeah, it is. It's floating around in the wind.
It's quite dangerous.
Yeah.
In a way, that's a request for service that should come through that process. But we can do all these things, no problem. But we just need to advise the people who will action it exactly what has to be done and get it done. So things like this, the skate park, we can put an RFS in for that and get that actioned.
Thank you. And Andrew, the universal metering for the district wide also shows as green, and I haven't got a water meter outside my place. That's going to be deferred.
It may be
deferred, or that's up to one of the deferrals that we're going to discuss on Thursday, I think, Andrew.
Yeah, the deferrals are not confirmed yet.
No, not confirmed yet. No.
So we can't put green or red or orange. So just bear with me on that one. If it does get deferred, and I'm aware of that, that won't happen till confirmed till my understanding is June.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a general question? Andrew, what's the process between a request for service and an actual project? I raised a matter concerning the safety of the Island View playground when it's right beside a big sort of septic looking pond for kids, and I just had suggested in a request for service that, you know, a fence or some security around that, particularly by the playground part of it. So is that a request for service, or is that a project that has to be?
It's a request for service, but it will end up being managed probably from these budgets by a project manager who runs projects. Now that sounds like a very twisted answer, but it needs to be documented and it needs to go through a system, and but that hence the need. If I can have a list of all those items, and I have been listening, by the way, all those items, and I can make sure they get to the people who will make it happen. That's my job.
Thank you.
It's Ian Smith here. Could I just have a word in here, please? Is that all right, Mr. Chairman?
Go for it, Ian.
That Island View car park, and I guess the simple answer to the question is if it's OPEX work, then it's a request for service. If it's a CAPEX work, it could become a project.
Yeah.
My understanding of that area at Island View is that it's supposed to act in the same way that Williamson Park is supposed to act, and I think it's just been lack of maintenance where it's been allowed to sit, and the high groundwater levels obviously through the whole spit. Yeah. So that you know should be just going through as a request for service. And for Veolia, I think it's and this is a bit of an if too, whether it's a water services asset or eroding asset is, I think, being discussed previously. But it should come as a request for service for one of those two entities to do the maintenance on it.
Well, it wasn't so much the maintenance. The request was that it's a danger to children who are at the playground because it's right by the playground, and you know, you can be supervising one kid on a climbing wall and the next kid's gone over the bank, and gone into the lake. That's health and safety issue as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I did understand that, and I guess my point is it shouldn't have water in it.
So it's lack of maintenance.
Yeah, no, Ben, just add to that too, there was quite a bit of wastewater around, it was mixed into it as well, so it did become a bit of a health and safety issue, so yeah, so thanks for your explanation, but yeah, we agree.
Okay.
Can I just raise through the chair if I can, on page, the next one down, the water system optimization, please. So I understand that we've got 2 plants that are getting close. Will they be open and finished before the June, do you think, Andrew?
No, I don't think so. Ian?
I think the objective is to have minor point. Yes, well, yes, they will be, I think, but they're not part of that project, Terry. They're part of the drinking water standards upgrade.
That's what this is. This is the drinking water standards upgrade.
Oh, okay. I thought you said the optimization project.
Well, that's, it says it, it's just the optimization. This is the construction of new pipe. Oh, yeah, right. So, yeah. So I'm talking about the water improvement. Sorry, yeah.
I'd be surprised if we do get that money spent this year. I'm working on putting a booster pump up to Governor's Height. So one of the 2 issues that have still got to be dealt with under that project is getting better turnover of the Herbert Drive reservoir. Right. So that sits basically and acts as a header tank at the moment. We're trying to create turnover in that, but when we lower that level of that reservoir, the people at the top of Governor's Heights run out of water. There's no pressure. So we're looking at doing a booster pump station to service the properties at the top of Governor's Heights. Right. I've talked to both of the landowners and I've got their agreement in principle. So I'm working through getting the land acquisition or the easement settled where we would have to put a booster pump station. And the other job that is part of that I'm hoping to get some design done for this year, but the work won't be done obviously, is to connect up the 100 mil main around the state highway. So from the wastewater treatment plant back to the school by some route or another. So those are the 2 projects that are, or the 2 jobs that have been undertaken under that project. And it hasn't been an easy road to hoe, but we are working on it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the update.
Thanks, Ian.
And the last one I got is the stormwater improvements. I know it's still in the discussion stage with council about funding, but it looks like there will be something.
Yeah, there will be. Yep.
Really, again, the message we're getting loud and clear, Andrew, is that we do want to have some local input to those who are going to be tasked with the job to make sure that they understand the issues around town before they dig it up. But we're trying to formulate it into some sort of plan or discussion document so we can talk to whoever gets involved.
I did hear the discussion previously, Terry, earlier on, and I'll make sure that there is an opportunity for those who are both knowledgeable and interested to look at the design in situ.
Thank you.
Okay. Noted, Terry. And it will happen.
That's me. You're very fortunate, Andrew, because in this town we've got about 3,000 engineers and 2,000 water engineers. So there's plenty we can give you advice.
Well, I can advise you, there's 30,000 in the district.
And some, probably.
They've all got Facebook accounts.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll take your point.
Thank you. Anything else?
Anything else?
I don't think Andrew's doing community grants or OPEX, is it? He's doing OPEX. No. Is it just with Eileen? Yeah. Okay, so it's me.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone.
The works report, is it? Yes. Receive it.
Yeah, so the motion that we've got for OPEX or CAPEX is that Still the Whangamatā Board CAPEX work program 2022-2023 and other operational information in the report dated the 11th of January 2023. Sorry? Yeah, thank you. Moved and seconded. All in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
And the next one's the action schedule.
I know, we'll do the OPEX if we can. So the OPEX is just under the CAPEX, there'll be 4 or 5 things in there. Just want to make sure that this has been under stress, this project, that where are we looking, sorry?
So you've already on the back of the work program.
Yeah, 80, page 80.
The work program, you've already done the resolution.
Yeah. Oh, is this the work program?
Yeah.
OPEX is not work program.
It's part of the work program.
Well, I asked them, we discuss it now, and they said, no, it's going to be OPEX. So the key concern I got here, guys, is that the information centre relies on a grant for this year, because we gave the grant last year to continue, and we'll be looking at that through the retained earnings operation, and I'd like to make sure that, and I'll be asking council that we continue put it into the program so that that business will continue on. It's doing a fantastic job, and I'd like the support of the community board to continue pushing for that funding.
How much is the funding?
$30,000.
On top of what they get.
Yeah. On top of it, which is 50, 53, 52.
So what's the additional for?
It's to make it viable. They've tried for years to try and run it on what it is, it doesn't work. So this work, we've done it for the last 3 years to fund it that way, and it works. So next year, when it goes to the LTP, we'll be able to block it, and then like all the other information centres. Okay, so that's the point I want to make there about that. Sorry.
Dean, do you want to talk to us?
Yeah, just through the chair, I just wanted to check if we're talking about next year's annual plan, then that will need to be discussed through the annual plan process, and there'll be a submission period and the opportunity for the board to take a submission at that point. Is that what we were talking about, Terry?
Okay, Dean, we can talk about it now. We haven't signed off the annual plan yet.
Are you talking about this year's budget, Terry? Are you talking about next year's 23-24 budget?
About next year's 23-24 annual plan budget, which we're talking about on Thursday.
Yeah, and so my point was the report that's in front of you now is talking about this year's budget, not next year's budget, which will be discussed through the annual plan.
Oh, right.
And we do have a briefing in your networking session, and we will talk about the type of submission that the board may like to make or not, and Kate and Leslie's team will provide that that background. Yeah, sorry.
Okay, got it.
So any other discussion on this topic?
No.
There's no motion
No, we've already done it.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
So action schedule.
So yes, so the dump station that we talked about with AJ and visited the site, is that still the preferred site? Who's looking at this?
That's Andrews. As far as I'm aware, the location for that was outside 101 Lindsay Road, but that's the project team are running that, so that was Andrew Bowden.
No, we looked at the 101 Lindsay Road and decided it wasn't suitable, so it was on the right hand of the road to where the concrete place is, and on the right hand side of the road across there.
Sorry, I wasn't part of those discussions, so I don't know, so it would be Andrew.
That was through the chair. The last update we got was that there was going to be a report come to the market meeting. So that's the one in 3 weeks' time.
So that's Andrew's
coming to that
project team.
Yeah.
I just was asking, is it still that location is still the location?
We don't know. We haven't been part of those discussions.
It was supposed to be opposite. Yeah, AJ spoke about it. One of these. Yeah. So we're actually waiting on a report from Mark for the third thing.
And it was going to be going as soon as possible because the other one has only got a temporary pump system in it. The current dump station was put on temporary, and they said it's got issues around working. So this was really having a bit of energy put to it so we could find the location, which looks a really good location. It's got close to stormwater, it's close to wastewater, it's got power. We're just about progressing it really.
In relation to the stormwater improvement project that we've got and undergoing public discussions and that with people, Eileen, have we got sufficient maps, i.e. to show that area for people when they do the discussion? Or should we be looking at getting some decent maps that people can look at?
I'm not sure what you're referring. The stormwater improvement project is run by the project team, so I'm not sure what maps are you talking about. Sorry, Dave?
Well, they're talking about having public input into the stormwater when they do the stormwater plan, and people being able to show their concerns for the different areas.
If they're going to be doing public consultation, then they will have sufficient maps. I would be saying.
Okay, so we don't have to forward plan by getting anything like that.
It's up to the project team who are running that project.
Okay, all right.
It's actually in the work program, and it says that there'll be a report and design to be completed by the 30th of June. So I guess they need to do that, so they will go on themselves.
Thank you. Any other matters for action plan?
Got the Chevron thing here.